Hello and welcome to a new episode. We are up to the year of 2017 that we'll be discussing as far as when it comes to video games. Before that, though, we will be doing our Relay of Gaming segment where I have some 7 games picked out. So if you're new here, what I do is that I've selected some 7 games that I've been selecting from a ongoing list that I've been updating for on an Excel sheet, and I'm up to like about almost 1,800 now on that list. And so then I just use a number generator to pick 7 games, and then I will discuss them here in this podcast. And then throughout the next week, I will be putting up a little bit of a gameplay segments on YouTube and on TikTok. You can certainly follow me there on Arcade Amigo. And then after that, we will talk about some modern gaming news stuff. Try to touch base with as much as I can on modern gaming. This is not so much like a up to the moment news podcast or anything for video games, but I do like trying to keep up with it as much as I can, and then just having a casual conversation. So I always mention that this podcast is basically try to think of it like if you're just talking video games with a friend, where maybe you get some stuff wrong and all, or you don't have the full details, but just having a conversation just for the fun of it. And then after that is what we'll get into the year of 2017 for video games. This year is considered to be one of the best in video game history. There's a few lists that I've seen, like where it talks about what is the best year in gaming, and this one tends to be either number one or pretty high up there. And it was a good year for sure. Not my personal favorite, but I can see why this one had a lot of impact for a lot of people. And one great thing about this year, though, is that for many people, it felt that it was kind of the return of Japanese video games. Not like they have gone away or anything, but I had mentioned before in some previous episodes that Japanese gaming just wasn't quite what it used to be for a long stretch there, specifically during starting with the 7th generation and a good stretch into the 8th generation. But this year things started changing, and it was spearheaded a lot by Nintendo's new system, the Nintendo Switch. But we will get more into that here as we start going into that segment there. Hope everyone's had a great week. It's where I'm living at. The weather has been a little chilly. We've had some rain and windstorms and all, but seems like it's not too bad of a day today. And so summer seems to be breaking here soon. Or not summer, I'm sorry, the actual spring, which is good. Kind of excited. We got this decent sized pool for our backyard, and then also a hot tub and all that we'll hopefully start getting to use here at some point as the year goes on. The hot tub probably more as it gets slightly chillier right and not during the summer, but that'll be a pretty fun thing to look forward to as we enter into spring and summer of 2026. Wow, we're really into the future now. We're way past like the year that Blade Runner and Back to the Future were set in for their future year. So that's insane. But let's go ahead and start with these 7 games that I have selected here from Relay of Gaming. So again, it's quite the varied choice here. And so starting off with the first one is one that I'm sure a lot of Nintendo fans are familiar with, and that is Super Smash Bros. Melee. And so this game came out in 2001 on the GameCube pretty late that year. The GameCube came out in November, and I think Smash Bros. Came out, wasn't a launch title, but I think it came out in December, so right within its launch window, I would say. And I mean, really, this game became hugely popular. I want to say, I don't know if I think it might be the best seller on the GameCube. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if not, it's amongst that. And we had Smash Bros. On the Nintendo 64, and that one seemed to, be pretty well received. But this one really took off, and a lot of it, I think, had to do that it sort of started a competition scene amongst a lot of fans of this game. To my understanding, I think that they still do some kind of a competition on this. I think it's like a event that they have. I'm not entirely sure, but and the other thing too also is that people really seem to love playing this game with or a Smash Bros. Games just in general, right? With the GameCube controller. Now that controller was very unique for what it was, and so I think it's just maybe the button layouts and the feel of the controller, right, that people really enjoy it. So much so that I know that they've re-released that GameCube controller recently on the Switch that people seem to enjoy. But Super Smash Bros. Melee kind of takes more what was done in the previous one and just adds new characters to it. I'm sure it probably buttons up some of the gameplay and all. I've played this one before, and I've beaten the game just like on the basic arcade game, but I can't say I'm a big expert on it. But what I have played of it is definitely fun. the Smash Brothers games are always cool and definitely good for multiplayer action. So I think it might have been one of those things that if you had the GameCube and you had this available on there, because granted the GameCube wasn't overflowing with a bunch of exclusives on it, but the Nintendo games that were on there though were definitely good though, and actually some of the best in many people's opinion. And I think that this is an example of that there. But next up is another fighting game, and that's the King of Fighters 97. This one actually I have some nostalgia for, as I never really got into the other King of Fighter games, like the original when they were coming out on the Neo Geo, and then as they got released, multiple platforms afterwards. But this one here, it wasn't the Neo Geo one that I got into, but back in the day, I started importing games. Well, actually, no, it's not necessarily that I was importing games. Is that I think it was EB Games, I think is what it was called back then, when the Saturn was still somewhat relevant. And they had a selection there of import games. And I remember I picked a few of them up, like Vampire Savior 3, I think a Samurai Showdown game, and then also this one, King of Fighters 97. And they utilized I think it was a 2 megabit cartridge or the 4 megabit cartridge, one or the other, that helped the graphics some and all. And so because of that, I really got into this game here, and I really enjoyed it. Really loved the music to it, and the gameplay was pretty good too also. And I mean, most King of Fighters games, they kind of play the same, in my opinion, but they're really good though. And but again, because I actually own this one, played it quite a bit, and beat the game several times with a lot of different characters and all. That's why I just have a lot of nostalgia for it. And for me personally, my favorite one, but again, it has to do. It's just the one that I'm the more familiar with. But I really enjoyed like the last stretch there with the bosses between the Orochi or something like that. I forget what it's called, but I just remember this boss that like transforms to different forms, and thought the music there was pretty cool and all. But yeah, excellent. I really enjoyed this game. Excellent game. Next up is a game that I'm actually really interested in playing. I really need to get around to playing it, and that's Outer Wilds. This game, I've seen that has received a lot of like praise for its story, its atmosphere, and from what I understand, it seems to be very much like a story-based game. And I don't know, has something to do with kind of like space exploration, but I'm not 100% sure. And I want to go into it as blind as possible, because I do hear like the story is really where it's at on this one. It has a very unique concept to it. Again, kind of seems almost like a walking simulator, but I think there's more to it than that. I don't want to know much more about it. I just want to kind of dive into this one and see what it's all about. I usually tend to like these kind of games where it's like a really cool story experience, and especially if it's not too terribly long, because it kind of feels like you're just watching like a really good movie. And again, from all the praise that I've heard about this game, it's definitely high up on my must-play games that I just haven't touched yet. So I'm going to try to go into it as blind as possible, and hopefully at some point I'll play it soon and report back on overall thoughts on it. But yeah, definitely one that I'm highly intrigued to play at some point. But then next up is kind of going in a completely different direction, and this is an old Nintendo game, but for anybody that was playing video games back then, you're probably pretty familiar with this one, and that's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So this one is different from what was released in the arcades, which was the beat 'em up. This is more of a side-scrolling action adventure game where you got to choose the turtles and go through stages, and it has a bit of like exploration to it and all. This game was notorious for being known as one of the more difficult Nintendo games, and that's on a system that games were known to be Nintendo hard, right? This is amongst one of the harder ones there for sure. I remember renting this game quite a bit with a buddy of mine back then that had the Nintendo, and we used to like playing it, but there was a lot, and we would kind of progress on it a little bit further each time, but I just remember it was just a little bit too tough for us to beat. I remember certain stages, like trying to find a bomb, I think, and deactivate them, or also the famous underwater segments where you're trying to, I think, also deactivate bombs, but you're trying to go through these electrified seaweed or whatever it is. And yeah, I haven't played this game in so long, but I remember it was pretty brutal, and it's known to have that reputation for a reason. So it'll be fun to capture some footage on this and watch myself get my ass kicked again and again. But even then, though, right, because of the license of the Ninja Turtles and all, it's pretty well. It was pretty popular at the time. At least I remember a lot of people talking about it, and even though it was pretty difficult, people seemed to still like it back then, though. But then next up is Echochrome. And so Echochrome is a puzzle game that I think first came out on the PSP. I want to say I think it came out on the PS3 also, but I'm pretty sure it was came out on the PSP originally. And so it's a puzzle game where you control this kind of like almost like a wireframe of, it's like a mannequin figure that you're controlling, and so you're maneuvering him through this puzzle. I guess like it's like a grid of some sort, I think, and trying to just get from point A to point B. Only the perspective is done in a way where it can make it a little bit tricky, and then as you go through further levels, it gets more complicated. I believe you can switch the perspective around and all, because I think it's like in an isometric view, if I recall right. And I remember playing this game way back in the day. I think it was like a demo of it that I played, and it seemed very interesting for people who like puzzle games. So it'll be nice to catch up on it and try to refresh my memory of what this game's all about. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, the PSP had some pretty decent puzzle games, and this is known to be amongst one of the more popular ones there. But the next up is a pretty new game that came out fairly recently, and I talked about it on my channel a little bit ago, a few episodes back, and it's for Buy Sweet Carol. And this game, I was scrolling through I think it was through the eShop or the PSN store, I forgot which one, and I saw this and I thought it looked interesting because it had like the look almost like of a Disney animated cartoon, only with a bit of a darker tone to it. And so I clicked on the overall description of the game, and so it seems to be kind of like a side-scrolling kind of puzzle game, but with some kind of, and again, it has a very not anime, I'm sorry, like Disney animation aesthetic to it, but it just look, it's darker though, right? So the gameplay almost seems something like from back in the day, the what was it called, Clockwork Tower, I think, game. And so it looks like you're trying to evade from some kind of creepy enemies, and while solving puzzles. But again, the really draw of the game is just its graphics looks outstanding. I mean, the animation to it and everything, and so it really caught my attention. And so I saw it for sale fairly recently, and so I went ahead and picked it up, as it's something that I definitely wanted to give a shot and see if it's something we can get into. Reviewed pretty well from what I saw, if you're into these kind of games. So yeah, definitely something that I'll be interested in checking out. And another game that, just by the look of it and everything, right, was pretty intrigued to play this game here at some point soon. I mean, really, if you've never heard about this game, so again, it's called Buy Sweet Carol. So Buy as a DYE. And it just, if you're like a fan of like the old 80s and 90s Disney animation, then this will definitely be right up your alley, as I think that just the aesthetics alone will sell the game on it. But then next up is a game in the Final Fantasy series, and it's part 4, but not just the original one, but this is one that came out originally on the 3DS and then eventually like on Android and I think the PSP also and such. But it takes Final Fantasy 4, only now it puts it renders it in 3D though, and so the graphics with the 3D models and all are, I would say that they're basically like 5th gen graphics, right? Yeah, but it's pretty cool though, right? Seeing this game in 3D, and not only that, it also adds some voice acting to it, which is not half bad done. And so, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy IV, but you've never played this one, it definitely gives it a new perspective on how to play this game. And so, I've been interested in playing this version here for a while now, as I've beaten Part 4 somewhat recently, but that was the Pixel Remaster version, and I really enjoyed that game. And previous to that, I had started Part 4 several times, but it was always like the Game Boy Advance version, the Super Nintendo version, and then, like I said, finally when the Pixel Remaster one came out, that's where I ended up beating it, and I really enjoyed it. Something that I could have really seen myself getting into back in the day had I played it when it first came out on the Super Nintendo. That would have been, back in 1991, I think, or 92 when it came out, here in the States anyways. But pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the game. And this is one that I think the next time I ever decide to play Final Fantasy IV, it'll be this version here. I'm curious to see what new additions were added to this one, or just, again, to see the game from a different perspective. As Final Fantasy IV kind of gets a bit grand in scope, where, it starts off very just like a, typical medieval RPG, but then eventually you're like climbing this really futuristic looking tower. There's a big robot. And also, you go to the moon. Not to spoil too much on it, but I guess I kind of did there, so my bad. But it's an old game, so, I mean, but hopefully I didn't spoil it completely for everyone there. But yeah, I'd be interested in playing this 3D version here. And seeing what this game's all about. It tends to be kind of one of the more outside of Final Fantasy VI. I would say that this is probably the next favorite game for a lot of people, right? That were into the old school Final Fantasy games. Well, this, I mean, the Super Nintendo trilogy, really, right? 4, 5, and 6. I think four and six are known for like their story and all, and I mean the gameplay as well too. But that they had a story that they were telling, right, and all made it memorable for that. For part five seems to get a lot of accolades mainly for its gameplay. But either way, though, all three of them seem to be pretty good. And so, yeah, curious to try this game out in the 3D version. If I do play it, it'll be probably the one that came out on the Android, though, as that's the one that I think I have. But yeah, originally came out on the 3DS, though. But that's what I got here for Role of Gaming. And so if you have any experience with these games, I'd like to hear your thoughts on them. Or if, at the very least, hopefully it added some games that you can put into your backlog where maybe you'll be curious to try them at some point. Let's get into it now, though, with modern gaming news. And so some of this is modern gaming news. Some of it is just games that maybe I've been playing that are more modernish. When I say modernish, though, that could go back, though, still a few years back, as I'm still getting caught up on, God, my huge backlog that I have. And just like random, or sometimes, though, like our first little story here is that it's not, I mean, it's like retro from a retro game, but something new though about it. And so, for example, I thought this was pretty cool that some developers or modders or some fan community, they were able to do Super Mario Brothers, the original one that came out back in the Nintendo, but they got it running on the Sega Master System. And it's pretty nice to look at. There's a bunch of comparison videos out there on the net now, and basically, it's I think they only did like the first level or two though, so it's not like the full game. And I don't know if it's accessible to the public though either, but well, I guess it would be right if people have been already testing it out. But either way, though, it's pretty cool though, and definitely shows right what this game could have looked like on the Sega Master System. I mean, the Sega Master System was more powerful than the Nintendo in most respects. I don't. I know that it had more colors. Everything else, so I'm not 100% sure though. Like how much better it was, or to what extent it was better, or maybe if something that wasn't quite as good. But either way, though, I mean, it seems like it runs pretty smooth. It's more colorful, and it kind of falls somewhere in between the original Nintendo and then the Super Mario Brothers All Stars one that came out on the Super Nintendo. And I mean, it's more colorful, but it's not quite as like the sprites don't look quite as like well colored and shaded as like on the Super Nintendo. Sometimes Sega Master System games have a bit of a, I don't know, they're more colorful, but sometimes they have a bit of a washout sort of look to them. Um, and then in the background on the Super Nintendo one, you have like these big puffy clouds in the background. This one, it doesn't quite have them as much. It just has like smaller clouds and most of the sky is blue. But definitely still looks pretty nice though. And I would recommend checking it out, if anything, just to see what this game could have looked like. And it's just a fun little, homage, right, that people have been doing. And hopefully it doesn't get shut down because I know Nintendo tends to be kind of sue happy, which we will actually kind of get into a little bit of that here later. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool though. So what I've been kind of doing for like these past 2 to 3 episodes is that I've been trying to organize my stories because I just jot them down on a notepad on my phone as the week goes on. But now I'm trying to organize it a little bit more where it's just kind of like gaming news in general. And then after that, I'll try to go to like if it's specific to Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation. So I try to do that as much as I can. It just helps me organize things a little bit more. But starting just in gaming news in general, so they finally showed off Assassin's Creed 4, the remaster or remake that was been rumored for a while now, and I gotta say it actually looks pretty good. They did a trailer and then they did like some kind of a gameplay overview. I just saw the trailer, but it's called Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flags Resync. Excuse me, comes out July 9th, so fairly soon. So July is starting to be kind of a bit of a stacked month. I've been seeing a lot of games releasing in July. But yeah, I mean, it looks pretty cool overall. But there's a few things to it, right? Just, right off the bat. So it's $60, which is not bad, right? Because I mean, and we'll get into the game itself here in a bit. But it looks like it's whether if you're buying it on like the physical version, right, for like a disc on the Xbox One or the PlayStation 5, it's looks like it's still basically mainly digital, where you still it has like, or I don't know if it has like a key. I guess what I didn't catch it. I'm sorry. I don't know if that actually has a disc or if it's just a code in a box. I'm not sure. So that already caused some, some controversy, and maybe why they needed to keep it at $60, or the way that they could do it to keep it at $60. I'm not sure. So that's a bit of a bummer. And yeah, right. But the game itself, though, it does look pretty cool. And I mean, when you look at the graphics, they are definitely improved. My understanding from I saw one dude's take on it, and it seems like it's not doing the RPGs. They're not remaking it in a sense like they're doing like what they did with Assassin's Creed Origins or Odyssey, where it had a lot of those RPG elements to it and skill trees and all. This is kind of going back to just like old school. It's kind of weird to call Assassin's Creed old school, but like the more old school gameplay of it, right? Only with improved mechanics, improved fighting, improved parkour. And so definitely bumped up the gameplay a lot, and it seems like it improved on some of the stealth elements. I heard too also, and so yeah, and I think also like it made it a more open world where everything is more seamless now, and where I believe I've just played a little bit of Black Flag before, so I'm not too familiar with it, but I think they're like this segment, right, and I'll load a screen, and so it looks like this one pretty much does away with that, so that's pretty cool. So I'm actually interested in this one now, because again, Black Flag is one that I never really played much, but I beat 1 and 2, and then I never played Brotherhood or Revelations, Assassin's Creed follow-ups to Part 2, and I've got about halfway to Part 3 or so, but that was on the 360, so I'd have to restart my game because I don't have that version anymore. But I want to play that one first before I get into this one, because my understanding, Part 3 and 4 kind of play off of each other, is my understanding. I think Part 4 takes place before Part 3, but there's some connection to the two, so that's why I would want to beat Part 3 first, and then so I'm actually thinking of booting up Part 3, getting through that game as best as I can, or as fast as I can, and then eventually move on to this one here. I probably wouldn't get to it by July, but we'll see. Though I'm curious about it. I'm definitely curious. But some pretty cool news though that came out for fighting game fans and for Final Fantasy VII fans. So this is a rumor. It was released by some reliable leaker, I guess. Oh, that sounds wrong to say reliable leaker. Like you can piss on Q, okay? Or no, but the rumor is though that there's going to be another season for Street Fighter, around the new Street Fighter characters, and according to this leak, it is Vega. So from he's been in Street Fighter games before, to do with the mask and claws. Hager, which is the he's been in Final Fight 1, 2, and 3. So the big old muscular dude that he's also the mayor of Metro City, which makes sense if he's in this one because part of Street Fighter 6 takes place in Metro City. Goken, who he is. So for a long time, he was always like a rumored character in Street Fighter 2. So I think he's like the sensei of Ken Masters and Ryu, I think, something like that. But he's kind of like an older guy, but pretty powerful, kind of like almost like a so Akuma, right? There's Akuma who he's like the dark version of like a really powerful karate dude, like that fights. Excuse me, kind of like Ryu and Ken. Goken is kind of the opposite of that, is my understanding. Honestly, I don't know the whole lore of this guy. That's just sort of the impression I get. But he's an older dude and all. He's been, I think, in Street Fighter 4 and maybe 5. I'm not sure, but yeah, but he's rumored to be in it. But the big one though is that Tifa from Final Fantasy VII is going to be in Street Fighter 6. So that it from what I've understood, right, I was watching some videos on this, and a lot of people are saying that, I mean, given what they know, people that follow the news on Street Fighter and all, it seems that this seems like to have some credibility to it because Tifa has been a very um, uh, highly anticipated character that would come out on some kind of a fighting game at some point because her character makes sense, right? Where the way she fights is very much, she's a fighter, right? With her bare hands. And so I think for a while it was speculated that she would be over on Tekken, but it seems like Street Fighter might have got her though. And so I have heard though that sometimes this will happen where I get either Capcom or somebody releases this information just to kind of test the waters of who might be leaking information out there, right? And so it could be the case, but this is a story that I saw in a lot of different news outlets gaming news outlets that report on this stuff. And so at the very least, they seem to have some enough confidence on there that this could be realistic, right? Again, it's still a rumor as far as I know as of the recording of this, which is on April 24th in the morning. So it's still not 100% confirmed, but that seems to be the case, though. So that'd be pretty cool. I mean, it definitely seems to make sense as far as like her character being in a fighting game. And the other thing too, also with I mean, it makes sense too, also because if Capcom really wants to, I'm sorry, Square Enix, if they really want to start driving up the anticipation for the Final Fantasy VII Part Three remake, whatever it ends up being called, why not have a Final Fantasy VII character right in another popular fighting game? And so that all seems to make sense. And so yeah, it seems like there's a bit of a backlash from Tekken fans that she's not going over to Tekken and instead on Street Fighter. But I personally prefer Street Fighter just because I just like the Street Fighter games more. But yeah, that'll be interesting. Again, it's a complete rumor as of right now. As far as I know, they haven't announced anything officially. My thought is that if this is true, it'll get announced here somewhat soon because they just released the trailer for the new character from season 3, I believe, Ingrid, which she's kind of like a I don't know, like this little girl that apparently has really powerful. I know she was originally in the Street Fighter Alpha 3, I believe, like one of the more later ports of that game, I think. But I don't know much about her character. She just looks like completely overpowered. But so I'm thinking now that they got that one out, and I want to say I think that's the last character of season 3. I could be wrong, but it only makes sense that at some point they'll announce, somewhat soon, anyways, that they'll announce the next season. So that'd be pretty cool. I mean, those would be, I think, Vega, Hager, and Goken all seem to make sense as far as I know. But Tifa also, right? That'd be pretty cool. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But another thing too, also that happened that was pretty cool. That was a bit of a win for just video games and video game preservations. So stop killing games. So it's a movement that started ever since a few years ago in Europe, where the goal of this was to try to get companies to stop, well, killing their games, basically, right? To taking them offline or completely delisting them, even if you've owned the game already. And this all started with the Crew game that Ubisoft came out with, I don't know, what, like over 10 years ago now. And they completely delisted the game. My understanding, I don't own the game, but I think they like completely got rid of it, even if you own the game. Like it just wiped it all out. So this one dude who seems to be the main guy behind this Stop Killing Games, he started this movement in Europe and got people to sign a bunch of petitions on, or sign a petition on it to try to, you know, put video game companies accountable for their actions on this. Well, they had a bit of a win, actually a pretty big win. Now, I think I talked about it before. Well, I wasn't expecting much to come out of this, but they ended up partnering with a lawsuit, I think in California, right, to kind of more or less the same thing. And so, from what I understand recently, the win that they had is that this could start becoming a legislation of some sort now that companies need to abide by. And it looks like Ubisoft is kind of making a step towards that. And so, what happened is that they recently made a post that for The Crew 2, so the sequel to the one that they delisted, it's getting some kind of an update, or it already has an update where it's adding like some kind of a hybrid mode where it's adding some kind of an offline mode, because again, I think I talked about it last episode, right? Where the purpose of this movement is that companies need to either refund you back the game if they're going to delist it, or provide some kind of an alternative where they can play the game offline. Kind of the simplified version of it, right? Of what they're trying to do. And so it sounds like it's moving forward, right? Because it looks like they had a really good hearing at court. And so things are moving in the direction that this could become law of some sort. And so Ubisoft, it seems like they're trying to like, you know, get ahead of it and say, okay, we're gonna provide this update. You can play it offline. Our bad, kind of thing, right? And so that's cool because that's actually taking a good step forward on this. And so hopefully this will become the norm, just going across the board, right, for video games in general. And that's cool. I didn't think that it would happen this quick, if anything at all. So I'm glad that there's something happening on this that's positive, because yeah, that's kind of dick, man. I mean, you just remove your game like that. That's come on now, But yeah, so that's good stuff there. Alrighty, so jumping over to Nintendo stuff. So there's the Splatoon Raiders game. So Splatoon has been kind of like a shooter game, but with like paint guns and all. Um, but this seems to be more of a like an action platformer game, from my understanding of it. But it got a release date, and that is on the 23rd of July of this year, so not too far away. I don't know much about it other than, I mean, I've never really got into the Splatoon games, and The only thing really I know about it is that my daughter, who uses the Splatoon little character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, she can kick my ass with that character several times. I don't know, something about it, she just knows how to use her pretty well, but that's about as much as I know of it. But for any Splatoon fans out there, it looks like you're getting a new game of some sort, right? In July 23rd, or on July 23rd. They also gave us a first look at Link in the new Zelda movie. I think it was like a photographer or cinematographer or something like that that's working on the movie. He showed off like artwork of what Link will look like in the movie. And I think like what do you call that thing? The thing that they kind of has like the little like bar that you move down and go action, whatever that movie clip thing, whatever the hell it's called. Well, anyways, at the bottom, from what it looks like, he shared a picture at the bottom of one of those that they're using on the production that has like this. It looks almost like a drawing of Ling, but it looks like the drawing is based off of the actual actor in the suit, right? And I mean, if that's legitimate, I mean, again, it was from someone on the set, right? That's working on it, and it made as far as I know, it was like a public post. It looks actually pretty cool. He has this green tunic, the green hat, but he has a cape too. Also, and it looks like he's holding like the Master Sword because they also showed a picture of what the Master Sword is going to look like, and I'm like, okay, that actually looks pretty cool. I am down with that, and so that actually got me hyped up for the movie. Again, it's coming out sometime in 2027. I think I saw something also that they just wrapped up production on it. Maybe something like that, at least filming on it. But again, it'll probably be a while until we actually get more confirmation on it. But that's cool. I'm getting more and more excited for that movie. I wasn't sure exactly what to expect from it, but after seeing that there, I was like, okay, I think that they're heading in the right direction at the very least, right? So we'll see how it all plays out. Again, the movie could end up being crap, but I have some pretty high hopes right now, though. But you can't talk Nintendo without talking lawsuits, and so there's a lawsuit again. Only this time it's a little bit different, where we talked a few episodes back about excuse me, Nintendo suing the U.S. government because of the tariffs and all. So there's that. However, though, video gamers are now, or gamers are coming after them now on a lawsuit of their own. And so basically what it is so Nintendo suing the US government because of tariffs and where they've had to pay extra, and so now they're trying to get some money back from that. But see, I'm trying to find some information here on it. Let's see. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, here we go. But now, two Nintendo customers have. So I'll just kind of read here what I'm seeing on this article here, because I kind of wrote some quick notes here, but I think I'd better look at an article to get some of my information correct here. So, two Nintendo customers have filed a class action lawsuit, and sorry, this is from a website, gamesindustry.biz. But they filed a lawsuit against Nintendo, alleging the firm intends to benefit by both raising prices for consumers while seeking compensation from the U.S. government. Last month, Nintendo of America filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government over the initiation and administration of unlawful trade measures last year, asking the U.S. Court of International Trade to refund the tariffs paid with interest since they were imposed. Now, there's a lot of companies that are doing this, right? Like I think Costco is doing it and some other ones. Nintendo just, if you follow video game news, they're going to be the ones that are going to be reported more because, again, it's a video game company. But the filing accused various U.S. government agencies of collecting more than $200 billion in tariffs on imports from nearly all countries. Wow. Now, in a new court filing reported by GameFile, the lawsuit alleges that Nintendo's recovery of tariffs would continue or constitute unjust enrichment and violate Washington state consumer protection law. Unless restrained by this court, Nintendo stands to recover the same tariff repayment twice, once from consumers through higher prices and again from the federal government through tariff refunds, including interest paid by the government on those funds, the lawsuit claims. The claimants, Gregory Hopper of California and Washington-based Prashant Sharan, filed their suit in Washington on behalf of American consumers who purchased tariff-affected Nintendo products between February 1st and February 24th of 2026. Nintendo is one of over 1,000 companies suing the U.S. government over tariffs alongside FedEx and Costco. These lawsuits followed the Supreme Court's decision earlier this year to strike down most of the global tariffs set by the president. Uh, and U.S. tariffs took effect last April as Nintendo prepared to launch the Nintendo Switch 2 in June. Pre-orders in the U.S. were delayed from April 9th to April 24th, but ultimately did not delay its eventual release. So, yeah, I mean, certainly makes sense, right? I mean, shit, they're going to profit twice. I mean, it's like at first it's like, oh yeah, Nintendo's suing the U.S. government. Cool, all right, because of this whole tariff thing that we're going through right now. But then, yeah, it's like, wait a minute, they're going to profit from it because we bought the products at a higher price because of tariffs, and now they're going to get compensated again. So. Sure, I mean, makes sense, right? That they would file a lawsuit. As far as it's going to go through, though, who knows? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there was this whole stop killing games thing. I didn't think that'd go too far, but look, it looks like it actually is. So, I mean, if it does go through, great. I think that'd be awesome. Hold a lot of these companies accountable, right? That just are trying to double dip there. But we'll see if anything comes out of this. Honestly, I don't think anything really will, but I could be wrong, and hopefully, I am in that case there. But jumping over to Xbox, so Halo Campaign Evolved got a release date, I believe, of July 28th of 2026 is what I was seeing. Uh, so that's cool and all, but it looks like there's some drama more behind it, right? So we talked already a little about this recently, and there was this dude, Glenn Israel, I think was his name, where he came out basically saying that a lot of the work environment there from the time that he was there was just really bad, and there was a lot of favoritism and whatnot, right? Um, well, more came out on this story here, and there was long. I saw a video of it, so I didn't jot down like the names or dates or anything like that. But basically, it seems like a lot of people in high positions, right? So like art director or I don't know some other, not just like just a regular worker there, right? It seemed like these were people in lead positions that they had all resigned or were replaced and all. And long story short, it seems like it's basically colluding with the story that this Glenn Israel dude did a little while ago, right, about the work environment there. And so a lot of it seems to be that just, playing a lot of favoritism, probably a lot of like politics involved in it. My thought would be like, if you don't agree with a certain politics, then, they would find ways to get rid of you because something came out where it said along the lines of like this Glenn Israel's dude's position of some kind of art director there was redundant, but yet later on they hired someone in that same position. So, anyways, it's like a bunch of stupid drama going on back there and all. Which the pettiness of the drama and all, I'm sure it's just it's just that, right? It's petty, but unfortunately, does kind of show right how video games could be affected in a lot of ways because of this. Like for example, like if you don't abide by certain, you could be like the best art director or best person in your position, but if you don't agree with certain politics and all that, right, that they can find a way to get rid of you. And so, long story short, how could that affect the actual game itself? Is I guess what I'm coming to, though, right? Because you know, politics is a very hot topic right now in the United States, right? If you're outside of the United States, I mean, I'm sure wherever you're from, right, politics play a role in your life no matter what. I can't speak for other countries. I mean, I can kind of speak for Mexico since I kind of, I have family there and also I'm a bit aware of it. But other than that, I can't really speak on any other country's politics. But I know that, United States being the superpower that we are, and then our politics are whatever side you're on, it's a complete fucking shitstorm right now, what's going on here in the United States politics. And so, because of that, it is a really hot button when it comes to like just politics in general, right? And all like, discussing politics at a workplace and all has become like almost like this big no no because it just can go south real quick. So, it's made for a lot of tension in a lot of companies, right? And some companies might try to play things neutral. Some companies might try to line their way one way or the other, right? Which is basically left wing or right wing here in the United States. That's basically what it comes down to here. And so if you go one way or the other, um, and and you're ostracizing basically people that oppose that, even if you're a very qualified person in that position, I mean, I can see how that can be a big issue, right? Because, if you're just hiring people based off of their politics, then, you could ultimately end up with lesser products, right? Now, I kind of understand, though, if you want to hire only people of a certain politics that align to your side, because again, if you're anything opposite of that, and you're potentially creating a lot of tension in your work environment, because that's how tense the politics are here in the United States right now. That it has spilled out to like everyday person just trying to go to work and do their job, right? It's just we're so divided as far as like what we believe in, right? Because again, it's for the most part people are just straight, either left or right. There's hardly any like neutral zone in the middle, and so if you do hire people from the other side, it can cause a lot of tension. Now, again, I'm not saying either way is right or wrong or anything. I'm just sort of talking out loud on this, but so I don't know to what extent this is, and again, without getting too political on it and all, right? I have my belief in politics and all that, but if I'm just kind of trying to take a neutral stance on this, my thought of what could have happened on this is that this Halo Studios for Microsoft, seeing that they're part of Microsoft, is that it was probably starting to become a very left-leaning sort of ideology, and then potentially like people that were like, or anything could have been a little bit more maybe potentially right-leaning or centrist ideology, and so that could have been part of the reason. That's just my guess. Like it could be even the opposite for all I know. I don't know. That's just my speculation on that. Um, Either way, though, I mean, it's there's a lot of nuances, I'm sure, right, to this, because again, I can't stress enough like how tense the politics are in just in our society right now here in the United States. That companies are probably having to make decisions based off what they're feeling is best for them, but at the same time, that could be at the cost of really good talent, though, right? Um, I don't know for sure, like again, the full extent of that story. That's just a little bit that I read on it. Again, their stance on whatever their political ideologies are and all, I have no idea. That's just going to be my thought. But I don't know. You know, it's it's the unfortunate times that we live in. I mean, like I work for a company that's probably a little bit more left leaning, but definitely don't want to doesn't want to really get into involving politics and all. Like there was even in the workplace that I work at, there's somebody had written on a whiteboard there and all, do not discuss politics with customers, because it gets ugly. And and it's just the unfortunate thing right now where we're at, is that I remember growing up, and I mean, as I started understanding things, when I was in high school, a teacher of mine, she paid for me to go to Washington D.C. on a field trip, which was very nice of her, very generous of her. I did have to work and mow her lawn and do yard work and all for about a year, right? So basically, what I would get normally would get paid for doing that work, she would use it. She wouldn't pay me directly. She would just use it towards this trip, right, to Washington D.C. And that was in my senior year. And I had, to an extent, already before. I'm not hyper political, but uh, ever since that trip, though, and all, I got to go to Washington D.C., got to go to the White House, Capitol Hill, got to see all that. I did kind of take a bit of an interest in it, and so that was really around the time where I really started learning more about Democrats and Republicans and independents and whatnot. Especially because just the people in my own family, right, and all that I've known growing up, there was people that were very Democrat and people that were very Republican. So at a pretty early on, right, I started understanding the differences between the two. And even back then, I remember that there was this debates happening back then, disputes, especially like amongst the people that were close to me, right, like family and friends of family and whatnot. And I remember them arguing about politics a lot. And I remember the whole time thinking like, wow, we really are kind of different, right? Here in this country still, where we can be a bit divided on that. But there was, and some of the debates would get a little heated too, but there was still. But we would still all be family. We would still all be friends. And so nowadays, though, I don't know if it's just because of social media or things like that that have sort of amplified everything, or a certain individual right now in the White House, which, is a big part of it, regardless of what you think, right? He's been a big part of this as far as like this divide right now. um, it's really gotten more escalated where now you really can't talk it because it's going to go south even worse. Where you're going to, I mean, people don't even talk to their own families anymore and all because of that, right? I say that all just to say, right, and all that that is how tense the politics are here in the United States. And regardless of what side you're on, right, I think you can acknowledge that, right? Left or right doesn't fucking matter what side you're on. You have to acknowledge that, right? That it's really divided this country a lot. And unfortunately, that spills into the workplace a lot, and that spills into again, situations like what's going on here with the Halo game, and um, it's unfortunate, right? And I don't have an answer as far as like how to fix it. I'm sure it's probably not a fun thing to be like a CEO of a company that you're really not trying to take sides on politics, but it's just so much in our lives now that you kind of have to, and I don't know, it's difficult. And again, I'm just sort of speculating there on what happened with the story there, right? I could be completely wrong, but I've seen a lot of this stuff here in the past several years about situations like this, whether if it's in stories that I've heard about video game companies or just even in, what I've heard from workplaces in real life, right around me, whether if it's my own work or people or jobs that I've had fairly recently or people that I've heard talk about their jobs, right, from, that they've held fairly recently, especially I would say within the past 10 years or so, that this is where we really started seeing a lot of the shift in things where politics do get involved in a workplace, for better or worse. And unfortunately, there's some unfortunate circumstances of that, right? That people sometimes get let go because of their politics. Um, Again, I'm not speculating on what side this Glen Israel is. I'm not speculating, of course, if there's anything specific, if that's specifically what happened. But given the information that has come out because of that, that it leads me to believe that something along the lines of that happened there. But yeah, anyways, interesting little story there. I just hope that this game comes out good, right? Halo campaign involved. It sounds like it's been having some issues because it's running on the Unreal Engine 5, but we'll see if it can come out at least in a decent working order. I'd be curious to play it again. I mean, ultimately, if it sucks, I still have the one on the Master Chief Collection, which is just fine. But at the very least, I hope it adds a little bit more, or excuse me, or maybe streamlines or trims a bit of the fat on the original Halo Combat Evolved, which, like for example, the whole library scene, right, and some of the levels just kind of were felt a little bit too padded out. But we'll see what comes of it. But a big news though for Xbox though is that so Xbox is dropping the Game Pass price. So it went up to $29.99. I believe it's going down now to $22.99. I think as of today, or effective immediately, or something like that. But there's a bit of a catch to it, though, which me personally I don't care about it. But it's removing Call of Duty, though. So again, they were starting to add Call of Duty into Game Pass. Hopefully that would ramp up the subscriptions and all that. But it seems like it hasn't really been doing that to a grand extent. Let alone that Call of Duty hasn't really been the force that it was before. I mean, it's still a big seller, but it's Call of Duty. It's just the quality of it. The one that came out last year was pretty bad. The one that came out the year before that was actually pretty decent, right? But overall, though, Call of Duty has lost, I think, a lot of its potential and quality. So this plan would remove Call of Duty, right? Dropping it down to $22.99, but you don't get Call of Duty in the Game Pass package. But some more information has come out though on it though, and it seems like this part of it here, I believe, is a rumor, but that Game Pass is supposed to start to be a little bit more flexible now as far as like the plan that you can get. So my understanding, it's almost like you can pick and choose, like, okay, I want this part of this package, but this part of this package, and then you sort of set your own price, something to that effect. I mean, that'd be interesting. I'd be curious to see what it's all about. But right now, if I don't really like to play this on the side of the companies, but if I am kind of doing that, I can kind of understand, to an extent why they would have to raise prices because, our economy is just in the complete shit right now. Um, Again, I'm not giving them all the benefit of the doubt just because, again, I feel like a lot of them are greedy as well, too. But I think that this is a fairly nice middle ground, right? You're dropping it down to $22.99, which is not quite what it was before, but it's lower. Getting rid of Call of Duty, which I'm good with, right? And so not bad. That's cool. I think that's a good move. So this Asha lady, I don't know, man. She might be. They've been talking about like how she's Asha Ara farming, which I'm barely learning what that term is now, which I think is kind of funny. But okay, cool, right? We'll see what comes of that. And the other thing too also is that it seems that so games under made by Microsoft or that on the Xbox and all are being called like Microsoft Game Studios, but now it looks like they want to go back to Xbox Game Studios. Or ultimately the purpose of that is that they're trying to get their identity back, right? Like we're Xbox, right? We're not just Microsoft putting games on different platforms. Um, I don't know, why not, right? I mean, it sounds like they're trying to get their identity back, which is cool. They have a long road to climb or a long hill to climb for that, but we will see though. Yeah, I mean, God, Xbox, they they fucked up a lot, and I'd be curious to see like what's that one dude, Matt McMuscles? He does like What Happened series. Like, come on, dude. I mean, at some point, I'm sure it probably won't be for a few years, right? As we gather more information, but like, dude, what happened on Xbox? Like, what? I mean, there's been a lot of information that has come out from it, right? But I'm kind of curious more on the more recent times, like when Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer were there. Like, what happened here, guys? So I'd be curious to know more information about that because if they're starting to make these moves, is it really because the previous people that were there were just that incompetent in their job, or were their hands being tied, or where they couldn't do certain things? I don't know. How much rain is this Asha lady being given? I don't know, but at the very least, right? And all, she seems to be gathering a lot of goodwill. Where initially, we talked about a few episodes back where she wasn't, but now it seems like she is. So we'll see. I mean, I'm rooting for Xbox too. However way, shape, or form that comes in, more competition, the better. And so I'm rooting for them that something will come out of all these decisions that they're making. But jumping over to PlayStation, though, the game Sorrows, so that made by Housemarque, so they're the developers that did the Returnal game, and so Sorrows, it seems to be kind of sort of a similar gameplay style, like a roguelike. And I mean, I saw the trailer to it. It looks, I mean, graphically, it looks amazing, and seems to be again like a 3D or third person shooter of some sort, but with roguelike elements. I mean, I saw a few reviews, like the headlines, anyways, right? And people seem to be really liking it. So I haven't really looked at much of the reviews yet. That's something that, again, I would probably get. I'm just not too big on these roguelike games. Not that I might not be able to get into them, but again, right? I'm just, a lot of newer games that are coming out nowadays. Not that they don't look cool, they don't look interesting, but like I talked before, right? I'm starting to back out of like trying to keep up with the latest and greatest, and so not something that I would get. But that's cool though. I mean, it seems like Sony finally has a decent exclusive now, and so I'll probably look at the reviews sometime later today just to see what the game's all about. But yeah, anyway, for anybody that's been interested in it, across the board from what I saw earlier this morning, as I was just looking at headlines, it seems to be reviewing pretty well. So there you go. But a big story that came out though recently regarding PlayStation. So I mean, this is some things that were already kind of assumed, but looks like people are starting to speak out right now that they've been let go from their jobs and all, and maybe after NDAs have expired or however that all works. Speaking of NDAs, I remember working for like this company. Just basically fucking packaging potatoes and French fries and all, and they would have us sign off on that, and it's like, you don't know where we're doing our potatoes from, but they're actually from McDonald's, and you can't tell anyone about it on how we do our potatoes. I'm like, man, fuck this, man. And so I remember going to my family and friends, like, hey, this is the seasoning that we use. This is how they're prepared. I was like, for fucking potatoes and French fries, but it's a big deal for them though. But anyways, um, yeah, but basically, so this he was a PlayStation executive of some sort, Shuhei Yoshida, and so he was basically around who turned the PS3 around after the just basically how they started off a bit slow, but then eventually the PlayStation 3 got a lot of cool exclusives, and then kind of was there during the whole 2011 hacking of the PlayStation 3, and he was also behind a lot of PlayStation 4 exclusives as far as like uh not I what is his role? Let me see what his role is. I think I took some pictures on this, so I'm gonna just talk it out of my ass here. Let's see here. Um, okay, so here's here's some quotes that he had done. recently. So this was in an interview that he did. And so basically he's stating, I helped Santa Monica to make God of War, Naughty Dog to make Uncharted, and The Last of Us and Sucker Punch to make the beautiful Ghost of Tsushima, he said, describing his work during the 2000s. Ghost of Tsushima was one of the last games I worked on as president of Worldwide Studios. Okay, so that was his job title. But in 2019, after 11 years leading the first party development, I was fired from the role. Jim Ryan wanted to remove me from first party because I didn't listen to him, he said jovially, prompting laughter from the audience. So whoever, it still sounds like he was in a, doing like a speech of some sort, I guess. He asked to do some ridiculous things, and I said no. Today is the 15th anniversary of the infamous 2011 PlayStation Network outage. Um, if you weren't there or you just don't know, okay, so sorry, so unquote, right after what he said, he told him no. But if you weren't there, you just don't know how rough it was for every PlayStation 3 user. That 24-day span of PSN being down felt like an eternity. Shuhei Yoshida speaks on Bloodborne and why he thinks PlayStation hasn't done anything with it yet. Mizaki-san really loved Bloodborne. He is interested, but he's so successful and so busy he cannot do it himself, and he doesn't want anybody else to touch it, and the PlayStation team respects his wishes. So okay, and there you go, as far as why we haven't had a Bloodborne remaster too. But anyways, yeah, so sounds like, I mean, there was a lot of stories coming out back then where Jim Ryan, so he was, this Shuhei guy was fired by, that he was trying to make this big push into live service games. Now, if you've been listening to my previous episodes, right, about like when I talk about like the highest grossing games and all, it's been like these free to play games or like these live service games and all, which I'm sure we're going to start seeing here soon, going forward. Starting with a big game we're going to talk about, in this episode here with Fortnite. I mean, it makes sense, right, as far as from a financial perspective, but damn, did they lose their identity though during the stretch here, right? I mean, PlayStation has been successful just because they've been kind of the default system to get when on consoles, anyways. Of if you're trying to get a console that's not Nintendo, but other than that, though, I mean, PlayStation has been, you know, it's definitely been for me personally. And I say this that there's been some good stuff to play. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've had a lot of fun with my PlayStation 5 Pro. It's just that when I think about like all the PlayStation generations, the 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, this is easily the worst one. It's just there's just not a whole lot that I can say what was exclusive to this generation that really felt that the PlayStation 5 was an amazing system, and there's really nothing. I mean, there's some cool games, like for example, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Final Fantasy 60. I mean, that's multi-platform now. I mean, Returnal, and now apparently the Sorrows game sounds pretty cool, but they're not like those games that I can say, yes, that's the game that I want, right? We had a lot of remasters, which is cool, right? Especially for someone like me that I enjoy playing the best version of a game. But I mean, what else was there? I mean, Ghost of Yote. I mean, that seems pretty cool, but I don't know if I'd call it like or generational defining game, right? And so, you know, I don't know. It came at a cost, I believe, right, when they were trying to chase this golden goose of live service games. And well, we'll see what ends up happening. Supposedly, they're trying to get their identity back too, also kind of like Xbox is. I think they both fucked around and found out, as a kid say nowadays. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see, right? I think I still feel like the lure of live service games is still going to be so strong going forward that I don't think we've seen a complete end to it. Right? They might be trying to get their identity back and maybe trying to push for more like first party exclusives and all, like single player experiences and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't think we've seen the end of it yet. I just think that there's just too much money to be made in that live service feel that it's too tempting. But maybe not, though, also, right? I almost forgot about the story that I talked about Fortnite recently. So maybe that is on a downward trend. I don't know. Maybe we're going in a different direction, right? I mean, when you're in the middle of it, it sometimes feels like something is impossible for change to happen. But then, if you go back through all the episodes that I've done, there's been a lot of changes in the video game industry, right? Maybe this whole live service thing was just a phase, and we're getting out of it, right? I mean, we went through a platforming phase, we went through a first-person shooter phase, we went through a fighting game phase, right? I mean, those games still exist. It's just that there was an era where they were like huge. We went through a shoot 'em up phase in the '80s, right? I don't know. You know, we'll see what comes of all this, but definitely kind of shows, right, that PlayStation was really trying to go in a live service direction. And unfortunately, a lot of talent was cut because of that, because they were trying to defy against that. Came across these two other stories, though, as I'm starting to finish off this podcast here. So I wanted to add them here to the modern gaming section. And I came across this trailer. It said Sega Universe, and it was in Japanese, though. But I was like, what is this? So I started looking it up, and so I'm just reading off of an article here from NintendoLife.com. And so basically, Sega Universe Initiative announced it's celebrating multiple classics with anniversary projects, reviving IPs such as Outrun, Knights, Sakura Wars, and more. So Sega has announced a new Sega Universe Initiative in Japan, which will see the companies celebrate the anniversaries of classic game series with all sorts of projects. The games highlighted on the official website include, so these are some pretty interesting games here. It's Outrun, Streets of Rage, Sakura Wars. So for anybody that doesn't know, Sakura Wars, it was it's kind of like a strategy RPG / romance sort of a game or gaming series that was pretty relevant in Japan. They never made it out to the States, but I believe they have had some English patches though. But then also Fantasy Zone, Knights, Sega Gaga, I'm not sure actually what that is, Guardian Heroes. So that was that really great treasure beat 'em up hack and slash game that came out on the Saturn. And Rent a Hero, which just came with a Japanese game, I believe. I don't know if Rent a Hero ever came out of here in Japan. And Dynamite Deca. As noted by our colleagues at Time Extension, this doesn't necessarily guarantee new games in these franchises. It could just be merchandise and other theme celebrations. The official Sega Universe description also notes how its classic IP goes beyond games, expanding into into entertainment and other areas. So basically it states here, games and characters born in the past, transcending generations and borders, they continue to live on in the same universe even today. Beyond games, expanding into film, music, fashion, and even further forms of entertainment. While changing form, the experience is constantly updated. Everything created here remains in someone's memory and is passed on to the next generation, end quote. So you can find a bit more about this new initiative on Time Extension. This announcement follows Sega's game revival of Shinobi over the past year, with more on the way. If we hear any significant updates about this new initiative, we'll provide an update. So that's cool. I don't know exactly what's going on with all this, right? So it sounds like it's still kind of, because you look at the trailer, it's a bit of a mystery as to what exactly they're doing. But what I'm excited about this, though, is that it's including games here that are a little bit not quite as well known, right? I mean, Sega has nowadays been dominated by basically Sonic, Yakuza, and what they publish for Atlas Games, which that's all great and all. I mean, that's good stuff. It's just that Sega has this huge lineup of like IPs, and so I'm glad that they're at least starting to put more attention to these. So that's good news, whatever it comes of it. But I got to thinking though, what about those Sega? What was it? The Sega Power Surge or whatever they were announcing, right? So or initially when they showed off Shinobi and then the new Streets of Rage game, Golden Axe, the Crazy Taxi, and Jet's Grind Radio, they showed like those quick little gameplay snippets of them. That's what, back in 2023, I believe, when they were announced. I was like, well, what's been going on with that? On this video that I saw about this, they did mention that somebody had posted on Twitter or wherever, or X, or that, hey, Sega, what's going on with this? And so then Sega themselves replied back to this person's response as like, hey, just, good quote, let them cook. So, they acknowledged it, right? Sounds like they're still in the works, which is good news. But, it's been a few years now, right, with no update. I mean, we did get Shinobi, which is cool, but I guess a little concerned about what's going on with development, but maybe they're really planning something cool, right? And so hopefully that ends up being the case. So as they say, we'll just let them cook then. But another big story that kind of came out, and this one caused quite a bit of controversy from what I was seeing it online. So I wanted to get it into today's or this week's episode here. My understanding is that I don't know the full details of this. So like I said, I just had really, I just found this article here and then I saw like a short video of it. But So I would say go do your research on it and all, because there seems to be a lot of controversy on this and potentially some misleading information on what was announced. But basically, so the article that I'm reading here is from Vice.com. So what it's claiming here is that so PS5 digital games reportedly now have 30-day online check-in DRM. A new report claims that Sony has implemented DRM in all PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 digital games where players have 30 days to check in online. A new report claims that Sony is going to be adding online DRM to all PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 digital games. If true, players will need their console to connect to the internet every 30 days or risk losing their license. However, is this rumor actually true? Received word from an anonymous insider that Sony DRM issue is unintentional. From what we gathered, Sony accidentally broke something while fixing an exploit. They've known about the confusing UI for a while, but didn't see it as urgent, hoping for a clarifying statement now. Although the site is reporting this claim is from an anonymous insider, so we'll have to wait to see if Sony confirms or denies this. For now, here's the original, report below. So the latest report comes from popular modder Lance McDonald. So a little bit that I looked into him, he seems to be pretty well versed in hacking the PlayStation systems and such. But in a series of posts on X, the developer claimed that Sony has started adding always online DRM to the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 digital titles bought on the PlayStation Store. Hugely terrible DRM that has now rolled out to all PS4 and PS5 digital games. Every digital game you buy now requires an online check-in every 30 days. So newly purchased games may require online check-in every 30 days. And so that's the thing. I think it's like, supposedly this was being affected by newly purchase games, right? I don't think like games you've already had in your library is my understanding. I'm not sure. But if the console isn't connected within that period, the license could be revoked temporarily. This reportedly does not affect older purchases. The usual primary console setting allegedly does not bypass this requirement, and there has been no official confirmation from Sony, so this could be treated as a rumor for now. However, McDonald then claimed that players would lose their license if they fail to check in within that 30-day period. If you buy a digital game and don't connect your console to the internet for 30 days, your license will be removed. The modder provided a screenshot of a game apparently showing off this new DRM. In the image, it now shows a PS4 digital game having a remaining time category now added to its page. Strangely, it appears PS5 titles don't show the new DRM category, but will reportedly still time out after the 30-day period without connecting to an internet. Or so it is claimed. Interestingly, the report then goes on to say that this only impacts new PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 digital games that have been bought recently. So if you paid for titles in the past, then this new online DRM won't be added to them. Games you bought in the past seem to not have an issue, but any game you buy from now on only work for 30 days without an online check-in. This cannot be avoided by using Activate Console as primary. All digital games now die after 30 days for all owners. We haven't been able to personally verify this PS5 DRM report's accuracy. However, following Lance McDonald's post, several other reports began to pop up that seem to corroborate with his claim. For example, popular game preservation site Does It Play also reported the PS4 and PS5 digital DRM as being potentially real. So Does It Play, they have a pretty cool YouTube channel where they'll test out some physical games to confirm if it works online or not. What we don't know about PlayStation's DRM issue. Newly purchased PS4 games now have a 30-day valid license timer, most likely introduced in March 2026 firmware. Could be a small bug similar to the incident from 2022. PlayStation 5 is affected too, but only shows an error. They also explained that it could be a bug and not an intended feature. What's noteworthy here is that there was a similar incident that happened in 2022, according to the site. So until Sony PlayStation themselves confirmed it or we get more tests, it's not entirely clear if all PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 digital games all have DRM from here on out. Regardless of all this, this is pretty concerning. So basically,
But I saw this one short video though where this guy was kind of debunking it though, so I don't know again to how ultimately serious this is, but it's definitely at the very least I would say it's definitely concerning though, even if it's like a bug that they did with the update and all, and then it gets fixed eventually, because it kind of seems like the fact that it's there to do definitely gives concern, right? That maybe it's something that they're wanting to implement at some point soon. And what's funny is that a lot of people were noticing is that, I mean, this is basically what kind of killed the Xbox One out of the gate, right? And why Sony had that great comeback where, they're like, no, you don't have to have your game online. But here we are, over a decade now, and Sony's doing the same thing now. So this is something that I would say at the very least, maybe keep your eye on it. I mean, that's, and again, I've said this before, right, and all, where I know I buy most of my games digitally. But either way, though, I mean, and that's why hopefully things like that, stop killing games and all, gets more of recognition, because it's practices like these that it's truly scummy, right? Where you buy something and then all of a sudden, I mean, if you just don't happen to check in for 30 days, you lose your product. So see, what I don't know though for sure, and again, I'm just going off of literally what I just read right there, right? But if you lose your license, but then if you log back in or can restore your license again, I say that because so I did have one incident with my PlayStation. Well, yeah, it was a PlayStation 5. It's like, I don't know, maybe about 3 years ago. I forgot how it all went down. I think I was just trying to play Uncharted. And so I've had Uncharted, the Drake's Collection, the PlayStation 4 version, in my digital collection since when it came out, which, let's see, I talked about it in 2015, I think, when it came out. So because I remember I bought it pretty much when it came out, and so I've had it in my digital library for a while now. But it was about 2 to 3 years ago or though. So I just wanted to play some Uncharted, and so I had the game on my PlayStation 5, through backwards compatibility. I think I had it saved, like I have an external hard drive hooked up to my PlayStation 5 where I have like most of my PlayStation 4 games, and I forgot if I had to re-download it, or I forgot how it went down. But basically, when I tried to put it up, though, it wouldn't load. And I was like, what the hell? So I started Googling it a bit, and so ultimately found out that I needed to go into the settings somewhere. I forgot where, but ultimately so that I can restore the license. Once I did that, then it booted up. But the whole time I'm like, uh-oh, this is not good, because it kind of, and sure, it booted right back up after I did that. But it just gave me that impression, right? And, like a lot of people have been concerned about is, how long are they going to let us keep those licenses, right? Because it's all being controlled by some server, it seems like, over at Sony somewhere, or however the hell that's all done. And I remember after that incident, that's when I'm like, shit, this is concerning. And so again, I know that I buy my games digitally, and, I am aware of the concerns of that. I just don't have really a lot of space enough to store like the physical games that I do. I've been buying some physical games for like games that I really enjoy and really want to keep. Same thing. I've been doing the same thing with movies. If it's something that I absolutely really love, and I'll buy that. It's just that, for the amount of games that I have, if I were to buy them all physically, I just don't have the space for it. I mean, for like one of those cool like gaming rooms, that people have, because I have enough games. Like if all of my games that I had were, in physical format, I mean, I would need a big ass room, right, to store all that, and I just don't have the space for that. And so, and it's just also the convenience of digital, especially, right? I mean, I do appreciate a lot about it. But like I said, I'm very well aware of all the, concerns that digital gaming comes with, like, situations like this. And it is a bit concerning, right? I'm not going to lie, right? Because I have a pretty large library of games. Now, this is why I've also talked about, emulation, how important it is, because we can't trust these video game companies to do their thing. And so that's why I've been a big advocate for emulating games. Of course, doing it in a way where, you're not just pirating the latest and greatest. I don't believe in that. I mean, I do believe that if a game is available out there for retail to buy, then yeah, absolutely buy it, right? I mean, if it's something that you really like, whether you choose to buy it physical or digital or however, right? But if they're not making it available in a legal sense, where you can buy it, in a convenient way, then well, yeah, sure, emulate it. Why not, right? That is my thought on that. And so right now, I mean, again, for anybody listening to this that hasn't been listening to anything I've said, I will say that if you're wanting to get into emulation, right, because you're concerned about stuff like this, I mean, right now with the devices that are out there and the emulation software that's out there, you can pretty much emulate all the way from the first generation is a little different, right? I mean, that first generation was very specific to the console, but from, let's say, the second generation, from let's say the Atari 2600 up until, I mean, the PlayStation 3 has recently gotten a lot of cool updates. And so from what I've heard, the PlayStation 3 is getting better and better at being emulated. So I would say up until the seventh generation, because you can emulate, like I said, there's a lot of cool updates that have been done on PlayStation 3. It's not going to be 100% on emulation on the PlayStation 3. The Xbox 360 seems like it's coming along, but not quite there, right? Like where the PlayStation 3 is at. But the Wii U, you can emulate that pretty well. The Nintendo Switch too, also. Although again, the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo's been taking down some emulators on that. The PS4 is starting to get up and going a bit. It's not perfect by any means, but basically, I would say you can emulate up to the PlayStation 3 was decent success. The original Xbox, you can't quite emulate that well. Excuse me, just because, again, I don't know if it's just a time or money or developers, right, that they haven't quite figured it out. I'm not sure. I know there's been some, a new Android emulator that came out recently, but it seems to have some, varying degrees of success as far as how much it can emulate. But it's coming along, right? But at the very least, I would say up until the sixth generation, if you're excluding the Xbox, that you can emulate pretty much almost flawlessly, right? If you have the right device and the right emulators. Again, with a few exceptions here and there. That's what I would start getting into, because again, we're just not going to be able to count on these companies, right, to maintain their servers and all. And so with a lot of the cool stuff that has been happening with emulation, it's that'd be a route that I would consider going if you're wanting to preserve stuff, even if you own physical games, because again, especially with the more modern games, so many of these games require online connectivity of some sort, that even if you have, like I said, even if you have the disc, it's, you still have to, it's still digital in a lot of ways, right? It's just the reality of where we live in now, and things are just getting worse and worse. Having a physical copy of a game up until maybe through the eighth generation would be good. But once we start going past that, so many games require online now that, it almost doesn't matter if you have the digital copy or not, right? Not all games, obviously, right? There's still a lot of physical games out there where you'll get the full experience on there, but we're starting to get away more and more from it. So, just something to keep in mind. But yeah, just wanted to touch on those stories there. But let's start getting now into the main bulk here of this whole podcast thing. And so we are going to talk about 2017. So 2017, I think I said it in my last episode, it's known to be one of the greatest years in video game history. I think it's a good year. There's definitely a lot of good stuff as I was making my notes here and just kind of mapping out all the games that came out this year. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. And one of the things that it's really noted for also is that it was kind of considered like the comeback year of Japanese gaming. A lot of that spearheaded by Nintendo. So we had the Nintendo's new system that came out, and not only that, but just some other games that were some amongst more of the bigger hits this year that were Japanese games. And so it was kind of cool, right, that we're getting a return to form, right, where, for so many years Japanese games dominated, but then we went through towards the middle end of the sixth generation, and then especially in the seventh generation and the start of the eighth generation, where that stretch right there was really dominated by a lot of Western developed games. They just outputted better games. But now we're starting to see a switch again, right? So it's been interesting, just talking about this and seeing all the different phases that the gaming industry has gone through. For me personally, I like this year. There's definitely a lot of great stuff. I wouldn't consider one of the better years in gaming, but it's up there though. It's definitely not a bad year by no means, right? A lot of great stuff. Again, with the introduction of the Nintendo Switch, that was a big deal. So let's just go ahead and start talking about it here. I'm going to take a drink of my little matcha thing here, but all right. So 2017 saw the release of numerous video games as well as other developments in video game industry. The Nintendo Switch console was released in 2017, which sold more than 14 million units by the end of the year, exceeding the underperforming Wii U lifetime sales. Damn. This also helped. This has helped to revitalize Nintendo because they weren't doing so great, right? The 3DS was kind of keeping them afloat, but the Nintendo Wii U did not do very well. So this was important, but they also had the retro Super Nintendo Classic Edition console. So last year in 2016 we had the NES Classic, where it was like a little mini Nintendo, a replica of Nintendo, but the actual replication of the actual controllers. This year we had this kind of the same thing, but the Super Nintendo. And actually, this Super Nintendo Classic Edition, I was kind of tempted to get it because it had a lot of the greatest games on Nintendo. I mean, I think it had, like, if I recall right, Final Fantasy III, Super Metroid, Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Just with those alone, there, I mean, it's like, wow. I don't think it had Chrono Trigger, but I mean, it had some outstanding games on there, right? And I always feel that the Super Nintendo library of games, when you're looking at the best games on that system, it's amongst one of the best systems of all time, and it has a lot of the games that represent that on it. So, but anyways, it came out this year along with the refreshed new Nintendo 2DS XL handheld and a strategy for mobile gaming. I think they released like some Mario games on mobile gaming. I'm not entirely sure. But Microsoft also released a hyper-powered Xbox One X targeted for 4K resolutions and virtual reality support. So I got the I talked about it last episode. I got the PlayStation 4 Pro, and then I got the Xbox One X almost immediately afterwards. So I must have got the PlayStation 4 Pro around this year then. Because I remember I bought one, and then fairly shortly after that, I got the other one. My thoughts of pretty much what I said about the PlayStation 4 Pro kind of carry over to the Xbox One X. I just wasn't seeing much of a difference. And I mainly got it because... well, I should say no, because I got it around this year. So there was a game it was a game that came out next year, but I think I was already, hearing some of the specs on it and all that, that I got the Xbox One X. I'll talk about that game next year. But ultimately, it's like the one game that I kind of felt did take some advantage of it. But other than that, I'm sure, like, if I were to see things under like the Digital Foundry lenses, I was like, oh, okay, it does look better. But just that to the naked eye with the TV that I had at the time, and again, it was a Samsung 4K HDR TV. It was fairly modern at the time, so but I just didn't really notice much of a difference. But either way, though, because I did get the Xbox One X, I was trying to buy a lot of like the multi-plat games on that system there, just because I knew, supposedly, right, they would look better. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was originally codenamed the Scorpio, and it's a pretty sleek little system. I like the look of it. I like the design of it. Much smaller than the Xbox One, but more powerful. And so, yeah, just the system itself and its footprint and all, like in your living room setup, was pretty cool. And so for that there, I did like it. Much improved over the PlayStation 4 Pro, which was just loud as fuck. But the Xbox One X, though, was pretty quiet. I mean, I did not have any... I will say, outside of that, and I think I mentioned this at some point before, I don't know what the failure rate of Xbox systems have been in the past, but I will say I've always had really good success with the Xbox systems, minus, of course, the original Xbox 360. I talked about that, where I went through two of them because of the whole Red Ring of Death thing. But other than that, though, I've always had great success with Xbox systems. From the original Xbox, when I got the Xbox 360E, I think it was called, or the slim one. Yeah, the slim one. And then... then the Xbox One, and then the Xbox One X, and then the Xbox Series X and S. They've all worked great for me. So, if anything, I feel like their hardware is pretty well built. Again, outside of the original Xbox 360. But anyways. Series with new installments in 2017 include Assassin's Creed, Bomberman, Bubsy, Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot, Danganronpa, Dawn of War, Destiny, Digimon, Dragon Quest, Doom, Dynasty Warriors, The Evil Within, Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem, Forza Motorsport, Gran Turismo, Gravity Rush, Halo Wars, Injustice, Kingdom Hearts, Kirby, The Legend of Zelda, Life is Strange, Marvel vs. Capcom, Mass Effect, Metroid, Need for Speed, Nier, Persona, Planetscape, Torment, Pokemon, Prey, Professor Layton, Resident Evil, Sniper Elite, Sniper Ghost Warrior, the Sonic the Hedgehog, Splatoon, Star Wars Battlefront, Super Mario, Tekken, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, Uncharted, Wipeout, Wolfenstein, WWE 2K, Xenoblade Chronicles, Yakuza, and Yoshi. Yoshi! Wahoo! In addition, 2017, I just saw this fucking funny video the other day where the Yoshi song. I think it's from, I don't know, one of the Mario games, or Yoshi goes go wah 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 wah. Well, anyways, it was that little jingle right from Yoshi, but it was set to the video of Danny Glover's "This Is America," where they're dancing and all in that kind of parking lot. Very kind of like it can be kind of a brutal video, right? I just thought it was so fucking funny. Anyways, but in addition to 2017, saw the introduction of several new properties, including ARMS, Cuphead, Doki Doki Literature Club, LX, Fortnite, Hellblade, Hollow Knight, ooh, my boy Hollow Knight, Horizon, Neo, and Players Underground or Unknown Battlegrounds. So, according to for financial performance this year, just overall in the industry, according to analyst firm Newzoo, the video game industry has 116 billion in global revenue, a 10% growth from 2016. The growth was primarily driven by mobile gaming, as 43%. 50.4 billion of those revenues came from this sector, a growth of 23.3% from 2016. Of the remaining 29%, US 33.3 billion came from consoles, hardware, and games, and 28%, 32.3 billion from personal computer games. Superdata similarly estimated the global video game market in 2017 was around 108.4 billion. Driven heavily by free-to-play mobile and computer games. Analyst firm Sensor Tower, which tracks revenue within the mobile industry, reported that the 58.6 billion in total revenues in 2017, 48.3 billion came from mobile games. Within the United States, the video game industry grew from 2016 by 18% to a total revenue of 36 billion. With 6.9 billion from hardware sales, gaining 19% from 2016, and 29.1 billion, 18% from software and microtransactions, according to NPD Group and the Entertainment Software Association. Further, 10.7 billion was spent on mobile gaming in 2017 in the United States, according to Sensor Tower. Highest grossing games. So the following were 2017's top 10 highest grossing video games in terms of worldwide revenue, including physical sales, digital purchases, microtransactions, free-to-play, and play-to-play across all platforms, including mobile, PC, and console platforms. 6 of the top 10 highest grossing games are published or owned by Tencent, including the top 3 titles. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a repeat of last year, or last episode, of last year. Let's see, there was only one game here that I can see that was like a console kind of game, right? But basically, it started with number 1, so it was Honor of Kings, Arena of Valor with 2,400,000,000. Number 2 was League of Legends with 2,100,000,000. Number 3 was Dungeon Fighter Online with 1,900,000,000. Number 4 was Monster Strike with 1,604,000,000. Number 5 was Crossfire with 1,605,000,000. Number 6 was Fantasy Westward Journey, some kind of an MMORPG, with 1,500,000,000. Number 7 was Clash Royale with 1,200,000,000. Number 8 was Clash of Clans with 1,200,000,000. Number 9, the console game, was Call of Duty World War II with 1 billion. And number 10 was Fate Grand Order with 982 million. Dang. Best-selling premium games. So these were not so much like free-to-play games and all, but number 1 was Players Underground, or otherwise known as PUBG. Looks like units sold was 30 million with 900 million in revenue. Number 2 was Call of Duty World War II, or WW2 as it's known, with units sold 19,630,000 with 1 billion in revenue. Number 3 was Grand Theft Auto 5 or slash online, and that was 15 million sold or 521 million in revenue. So for the next here, several, there won't be any revenue status or statistics, but number 4 was Super Mario Odyssey with 9,070,000 units sold. Number 5 was Star Wars Battlefront 2 with 9 million units sold. And number 6 was Pokemon Sun Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon with 8,530,000 units sold. Number 7 was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with 7,780,000 units, or 7,780,000 units sold. Number 8, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with 7,470,000 units sold. And then number 9 was FIFA 2017. So this one kind of flip-flops where it doesn't show how many units sold, but it was $409 million dollars. And then number 10 was Overwatch, which again, no status here or statistics on how many it sold, but 382 million in terms of revenue. So yeah, top rated games overall, let's see. So The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I mean, on the Nintendo Switch, I mean, that came in at a 97% average score. This one doesn't give a breakdown if it was like through Metacritic. Or actually, I think it is just Metacritic. And then the second one was Super Mario Odyssey, also at 97. Outstanding games. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but on the Wii U, came in at 96. And then Divinity Original Sin 2. These games are really popular, but I don't know a whole lot about them. But that came in at 93. And then Persona 5 at 93 also, too. Major awards as far as for Game of the Year, I mean, pretty much across the board. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This is a generational game. We'll get into this game later, but yeah, well deserved. I would say if there was any other game that was probably taking some awards as far as, maybe in certain publications, but it may be Super Mario Odyssey. But for the most part, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild definitely took the critical awards for this year. It was just a landmark title, right? I mean, a game that you only get so many times in a generation. And yeah, I mean, well deserved. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is amazing. But let's go over some events here. So in January 3rd through the 7th, so the 2017 Consumer Electronics Show was held in Las Vegas, Nevada. January 9th, the video game writer Corey May leaves certain affinity to work for 2K Games. January 13th, the Nintendo Switch console reveal detailing its release day, price, and technical specifications was held at Tokyo Big Sight and live streamed online on Nintendo Direct. Also on January 13th, so Sony Interactive Entertainment closes Gorilla Cambridge. January 16th, Hidetaka Suehiro announces that he has formed a new independent studio called Byte Owls. January 19th, Ubisoft acquires Freestyle Games from Activision. Freestyle Games is renamed into Ubisoft Leamington. January 19th, so video game designer Kim Swift is hired by Electronic Arts into their Motive Studios division. January 24th, Avalanche Software, previously shuttered by Disney in May 2016, is acquired by Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment and reopened. January 31st, global production of the Wii U has officially ended. February 1st, ZeniMax Media acquires Escalation Studios. February 1st, Take-Two Interactive acquires Social Point. February 1st, also, ZeniMax Media is awarded $500 million from Oculus VR over intellectual property and contract issues over the virtual reality technology used in Oculus Rift. February 17th, writer Eric Wolpaw leaves Valve. February 21st to the 23rd, Academy of Interactive Arts and Science hosted the 2017 DICE Summit and 20th Annual DICE Awards at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. Todd Howard inducted into the AIAS Hall of Fame. February 23rd, Irrational Games is rebranded as Ghost Story Games. February 27th, Peter Moore steps down as head of EA Sports to become CEO of the Liverpool Football Club. So Peter Moore, he was kind of all over the place. He was with Sega, Xbox, and EA. February 27th to March 3rd, the 2017 Game Developers Conference is held in San Francisco. March 15th, Kevin Brunner steps down as CEO of Telltale Games, with Dan Connors replacing him. Yeah, because Telltale Games here pretty soon, we might start hearing some things about this here at one of these coming up years, if not maybe this year, is that there were some issues that started happening with this company. And so, because they had like this really big output of games, right, as we've been talking about some of them, like The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, Batman, and there's some others too that I didn't cover, but like the Game of Thrones the series, and then also there was a Tales of the Borderlands series also. But yeah, I don't know, something happened behind the scenes. But March 30th, Club Penguin shutters its servers after 12 years. March 31st, Square Enix withdraws from IO Interactive. March 31st, Nintendo closes the Nintendo DSi shop on the DSi and DSi XL, so we're starting to see more digital storefronts close. April 3rd, Christoph Balestra steps down as co-president of Naughty Dog. Evan Wells remains in his role as sole president. April 27th, the Kirby franchise celebrated its 25th anniversary in Japan. April 2nd, Chet Falasek announced he has left Valve. May 10th, Alchemy Labs is acquired by Google. June 7th, Jay Pinkerton announced he has left Valve. June 10th to the 12th, EA Play was held at the Hollywood Palladium. June 13th to the 15th, E3 2017 was held at the Los Angeles Convention Center. June 16th, IO Interactive becomes an independent studio from Square Enix, retaining rights to the Hitman franchise. June 27th, I've never really gone into the Hitman series. Maybe something I should try at some point. Anyway, June 27th, Arcane Studios founder Rafael Colantonio leaves the company. June 30th, Triumph Studios, the developer of the Age of Wonder series, is acquired by Paradox Interactive. July 18th, Casey Hudson replaces Aaron Flynn as a general manager of BioWare. August 1st, Electronic Arts confirmed that BioWare Montreal, the developer of Mass Effect Andromeda, was absorbed into Motive Studios. August 8th, Ubisoft announced the establishment of a new studio in Stockholm, Sweden. August 7th through the 12th, the International 2017, one of the highest paying esports tournament in history, was held at the Keystone in Seattle. Wow. August 22nd to the 26th, Gamescom 2017 was held at Coalamisi. Yeah, then it just says in September, People Can Fly opened the new studio in Newcastle, UK, their first outside of Poland. So People Can Fly, they did like that Bulletstorm game. They also did, what else have they done? They did the Bulletstorm game. I think they did the Gears of War Judgment, maybe? They also did like this other first-person shooter, I believe, back on PC back in the day too, if I recall right. September 13th, Bruce Straley, co-director of The Last of Us and Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, departed from Naughty Dog after 18 years. I wonder if that was how much that might have affected a certain game that comes out in a few years later. We'll talk more about that game. But let's see, October 3rd, Andrew House, president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, announced his departure from the company. August 12th, Mike Laidlaw, the creator director of the Dragon Age franchise, left BioWare. August 13th, IGN acquires Humble Bundle. October 17th, Visceral Games, the developer of Dead Space series, was shut down by owner Electronic Arts. So I remember that being kind of a big deal. I mean, yeah, they made Dead Space. I think, did they also make that Dante's Inferno game? I think so. I'm not sure. Dead Space 3 was, it wasn't the greatest, but Dead Space 1 and 2 are amazing, though. And it sounds like, I mean, it seemed like a studio that had a lot of talent, but, such goes the industry, right? With, business and all. November 3rd, Perfect World Entertainment shut down Runic Games and Motiga. November 9th, Electronic Arts announced that they had acquired Respawn Entertainment, the creators of the Titanfall series. November 20th, 100 Thieves is founded. December 7th, the Game Awards 2017 were held, which again, it was the game of the year was Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. December 14th, a private division, a new publishing subsidy of Take-Two Interactive is formed. December 28th, a swaddling in Wichita, Kansas, caused by a dispute between two Call of Duty. Oh, okay, wait. A swatting in Wichita, Kansas, this caused a dispute between two Call of Duty World War II gamers over a $1.50 wager leads to a man unrelated to the dispute being shot and killed by police. Yes, I saw a documentary on this somewhat recently, and my God, man, this is so fucked up. It's basically, so if you don't know, because it was like maybe 2 to 3 years ago or so where I saw this documentary about this. What I recall is, so if you don't know what swatting is, it's don't do it. All right, first of all, don't do it. But it's basically where you literally call, like, there's some kind of an emergency, right? So that the SWAT team can go to so and so person's house. When you send SWAT to a team or to a location, they're gonna go, armed and ready to go, right? I mean, they're anticipating that there's going to be some kind of an emergency that they're coming into, and unfortunately, this led to some innocent bystander being shot. I think like the person came out of the door, and from the information that the SWAT team had, I think that they opened fire. I like I said, it's an interesting story. Actually, let's see here. Let's see if I can read on this. Yeah, because it's very unfortunate. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's. Okay, so the target was Shane Gaskill, but let's see, but the person that was killed looks like was Andrew Thomas Finch. So on December 28th, 2017, a fatal swatting incident occurred in Wichita, Kansas, United States, during an online dispute between Casey Viner and Shane Gaskill regarding the video game Call of Duty World War II. Viner threatened to have Gaskill swatted. Gaskill responded by giving him a false Wichita address for his residence, one that was occupied by an uninvolved person, Andrew Finch. Viner then asked Tyler Barris, an anonymous online swatter, to make a fraudulent call to initiate the swatting. Wichita police responded to the address, and as Finch exited the house, police officer Justin Rapp fatally shot him. Barris pleaded guilty in involuntary manslaughter and several previous unrelated crimes. And in March 2019, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Viner was sent to 15 months imprisonment and 2 years for supervised release for his involvement, while Gaskill was sent to 18 months imprisonment. Rapp was not charged for Finch's death. So that's kind of the gist of it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to know more about it, definitely check out the story. It's very unfortunate. I mean, here's again, I mean, for all I am understanding of this, right, it was an innocent bystander, all because of some people, right, and all that they just couldn't, I guess, handle a little bit of shit talking, I guess, or whatever. It just, I don't know. There's always been stuff like this that have happened, right? And I mean, there's always been bullies. There's always been people very insecure that lash out and everything. Online, though, just gives people so many more tools, though, to bully people, harm people, right? Ruin people's lives and everything. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, so it's just the world we live in now. But yeah, it's a very unfortunate story. Like I said, I think I saw a documentary on it somewhere. I forgot. Maybe it was just on YouTube. I'm not sure, but yeah, interesting what happened, but yeah, very unfortunate. Let's see, but for notable deaths, though, this year, January 10th, so Tony Rosato, age 62, actor who voiced Luigi in the Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, and provided additional voices for Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. So he passed. January 19th, Miguel Ferrer, age 61, passed, who was the actor who voiced Shan Yu in Mulan and its Disney's animated storybook adaptations. Covenant heretic leader Sessa Rafumi in Halo 2, and Death in Adventure Time explored the dungeon because I don't know. It's an interesting name for a game. January 22nd, Masaya Nakamura, age 91, businessman and founder of Namco. Ooh, he passed, so founder of Namco. February 17th, Alan Stone, age 71, co-founder of Nintendo of America, passed. June 2nd, Peter Salis, age 96, English actor and voice actor, best known for playing Norman Clegg in The Last of the Summer Wine. He voiced Wallace and Gromit franchise, and he also voiced Rat in Cosgrove's Hall, The Wind in the Willows. Salis also voiced Wallace in several video games, including Wallace and Gromit in Project Zoo and Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. June 9th, Adam West, age 88, voice actor, best known for the voice of Mayor Adam West in Family Guy franchise, and also Batman, right? Wasn't he Batman from the... Yeah, he was also Batman in those 60 Batman shows. Let's see. Oh, lost my place where I was at. Oh, here we go. July 18th, Harvey Atkin, age 74, actor who played King Koopa in the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. So also the Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3 and Super Mario World passed. July 26th, June Foray, 99, voice actress best known for the voice of villainess Magica De Spell in the original DuckTales series, as well as the 2013 video game DuckTales Remastered, which is a remaster of the original 1999 video game. August 5th, Daniel Licht, age 60, composer of Dishonored series and Silent Hill, passed. November 7th, Roy Halladay, age 40, baseball player who appeared in MLB 2K titles and was the cover star of MLB 2K11. And December 10th, Angry Grandpa, age 67, YouTuber known for destroying video game consoles, passed. Wow. It's hardcore what he was doing. Let's see, hardware releases. So the following hardware was released in this year. So again, Nintendo released two systems this year. The Nintendo Switch would help save the company in the home console industry from the failure of the Wii U, and the new Nintendo 2DS XL, the final revision model of the Nintendo 3DS, as well as the final entry in the Nintendo DS family overall. Because, with the Switch, right, it being a portable, it's I want to, maybe not so much like a portable system, but a system that can go portable. If that makes any sense. Because otherwise the DS was the last lineup of Nintendo consoles that were dedicated handhelds. But then Microsoft also released the Xbox One X, the second revision model of the Xbox One, and the main competitor to the Sony's PlayStation 4 Pro. As of 2026, the Nintendo Switch is the third best-selling video game console of all time, right behind the Nintendo DS and the PlayStation 2, which actually, quick update on that, because I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago, where it actually overtook the Nintendo DS. So it's right on the heels of the PlayStation 2. Will it beat it? Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's up there. So the Nintendo, new Shield Android TV came out on January 10th. Nintendo Switch worldwide came out March 3rd. Then a new Nintendo 2DS XL came out on June 15th in Australia, July 13th in Japan and Korea, and July 28th in North America and Europe. September 29th, the Super Nintendo Classic Edition came out in North America and Europe, and then September 30th in Australia, and on October 5th in Japan, and then November 7th, the Xbox One X released worldwide. So, yeah, a lot of stuff there, right? So let's get into the Nintendo Switch here. Actually, before I talk about that system, let's first go over games, and then we'll get back here to the Nintendo Switch. So starting with handhelds, again, we're just mainly talking about the 3DS here. This will probably be the last time that I have a small little section here dedicated for handhelds. I know I haven't really covered them a lot, like I said, right? I just really didn't was into handheld gaming. I owned a few systems back in the day, I've mentioned before, but ultimately I just never really owned a lot of them. Going forward, though, from here, because of the Nintendo Switch, is where I actually started playing games more portably. So funny how that goes, right? But here are two games though that I felt were pretty cool though on the Nintendo 3DS/2DS, and one is it's a remake or remaster more like it of Dragon Quest VIII: Journey of the Cursed King. One of my all-time favorite games. I absolutely love it. It's an incredible JRPG. My favorite Dragon Quest game, and really, I think it's within my top 20 favorite games of all time. It is just so good. Classic RPG gameplay, but with a lot of charm, a lot of polish, great graphics, great music, great story. Absolutely love it. And it plays really wonderful on the 3DS. You gain something from it, you lose something from it compared to the PlayStation 2 version. I guess kind of there is if you modded a version of this game, but I kind of wish there was that there was like a version that combined both of them, like an official release, because what this version does really well is that it gives you quality of life improvements. So like you can speed up the battles, and there's no more random encounters. Where in this one, you see the enemy walking around in the overworld map and in the dungeons, which is great. And it speeds up the battles too also, which is great. So basically makes grinding and that part of it there a lot more better, right, than the original. Because the original one, it had its encounter rates. I don't recall if it goes higher or low or not, but it just made grinding more of a chore. And then also because of battles, they didn't play like really slow, but they weren't the fastest either. So that you can speed up the battles in this one definitely makes it a lot better. They've been doing this with a lot of Dragon Quest games now, like for example, the HD remakes that came out of 1, 2, and 3. Also Dragon Quest 11, Dragon Quest S has that. And so all of that is great. Right, I really appreciate when they can do that on like kind of like more old school turn-based RPG games, whether if it's a new feature being added to an old game or new games that have a retro turn-based style. Right, I think it's great. So there's that. And then also it has 2 new playable characters, which there were characters in the original one, but you can play them in this one, which is what's her name? Red, I think. She's like a thief in it. And then the dude, I forgot what, Mori, I believe, the dude that runs like the monster arena. I never really used them. They're fun characters and all, but not something that I would add to the overall party, just because I really enjoy the original party of, the main character, Yangus. Fucking Yangus is hilarious. God blimey. Fucking when the King Trode or whatever his name is sneaks up on him and he's like, "God blimey!" It's like it cracks me up each time. But anyways, and then Jessica and Yangus, or not Yangus, Angelo, they're really fun. But anyway, so all of that is great. Downsides of it though is it's playing on the smaller screen, and so which is not a bad thing necessarily, but the graphics are slightly downgraded from the PlayStation 2 version. And then also the sound. So like the soundtrack is really great in the original, right? It's very symphonic, very, classic Dragon Quest music. In this one, well, because in the PlayStation 2 version, it's more, it's actual symphonic sound, where in the DS version, the 3DS version is kind of more of a meaty soundtrack. And so because of that, the quality is definitely not as good. It's not bad sounding. It's just that the original Dragon Quest music sounds really beautiful and very engaging when it's the actual symphonic recorded sound, right? It just sounds so much better. So you do lose that in this version here. So again, it kind of, checks and balances, I guess, right? Of which version is better. I'm probably going to say that the 3DS one overall is better because it's a better playing version, in my opinion. The quality of life improvements really make it worth it. Some extra features on it and all. You do get a bit of a slight downgrade in graphics and in sound, but I will take overall, as a bit of a nuisance as that is, I will still take the quality of the gaming experience over the graphics and sound, basically. And so that's why I would go with the 3DS version. There are ways to mod it, right? If you have the know-how and want to do that. But if we're just talking official releases, that's what I would suggest on that. But then also on the 3DS, we had Metroid Samus Returns. So this game came out kind of late into the 3DS lifetime, and it's a pretty good game overall. It's basically a remake of the Metroid 2 Return of Samus game on the old Game Boy. Now, this is actually an interesting story because the previous year, and I don't think I talked about this, but there was a game that was developed by, let me see if I can find it here as I'm talking, but there was some kind of a developer, fan, modder, I'm not exactly sure, but he did a, let's see, AM2R. Here we go. Okay. So he developed this game called AM2R, which stands for Another Metroid 2 Remake. Because there had been a lot of attempts, from my understanding, to remake Metroid 2 within the fan community. And because Metroid 2 is a game that I think a lot of people felt that had a lot of potential, but just ultimately didn't... it was just made on the Game Boy, right, and all, which was very limited as far as what they could do with it. So, so AM2R is an action adventure game developed by the Argentine programmer Milton Guasti and released for Windows on August 6th of 2016, Metroid's 30th anniversary. AM2R is an unofficial remake of the 1991 Game Boy game Metroid 2 Return of Samus by Nintendo, largely based on the visual styles of Metroid Zero Mission. So yeah, so it looks very much like in line with Metroid Zero Mission. Let's see. As in the original Metroid 2, players control bounty hunter Samus, who aims to eradicate the parasitic Metroids. AM2R adds features including new graphics and music, new areas and bosses, altered controls, and map systems. So it received a lot of positive reviews, particularly for its graphics. It was nominated for the Game Awards in 2016, but was dropped from all the nominee lists without notice. Shortly after release, Nintendo sent a DMCA notice to websites hosting AM2R, and download links were removed. Though Guasti, the programmer, planned to continue working on the game privately, in September 2016, he ended development after receiving a DMCA takedown request by Nintendo. Nintendo released an official Metroid 2 remake, Metroid Samus Returns, in 2017. So yeah, so basically that's what happened, right? And so, because again, there have been a lot of attempts to make a Metroid 2 remake amongst the fan community. A lot of them were okay from my understanding, but this one was actually pretty well done. And what I've played of it, it's really good. I mean, it feels almost like pretty much like an official release. Really well controlled. I love playing it on the end, and my Odin 2. I haven't beaten it yet, but it's really well done. I mean, pretty polished overall, even though they took it down. You can find it on the internet, right? But overall, really great. Well, I mean, Nintendo's going to take it down, right? Because first of all, you're using their property, right? And you didn't get the rights for it, from my understanding, which is probably why they took it down. So, I mean, it makes sense why they would take it down, right? Even though it's like, there's been a lot of other companies like Sega, for example. My understanding is that they're pretty friendly to the modding and fan community, right? When they want to do like fan games and such. Nintendo, definitely not. So they shut that down. And another part of the reason, though, was because they had their own remake in the works. And so that came out this year in 2017. So the one that Nintendo did, so it was developed by Mercury Steam. So they were the ones that also did the Castlevania Lord of Shadows games a few years back. I briefly mentioned about those games. And so the Metroid Samus Returns is a 2.5D game, still set within the universe of Metroid 2, obviously, right? And so you're doing kind of the same thing. You're eradicating all these Metroids on this alien planet, but it really expands it out more, right? Kind of the same thing with the fan remake did. This one also just really expands the level designs out and just makes it a lot bigger. And I actually beat this game fairly recently, like maybe a year and a half ago or so. No, maybe less than that. Maybe about a year ago or so. And I really liked it. It's good. I don't know if I'd go back to this one because I did feel like it was good, but it definitely felt like a game because Metroid 2, Return of Samus on the Game Boy, it's a fairly short game, all things considered. It's a bit difficult to navigate in that game just because of the, black and white or the two-color scheme on it. It's kind of hard to determine where exactly you're at. I got a little ways into that one, but then I got lost because I was like, okay, I forgot where I'm at. And it doesn't have a map. And also, and then like I said, I played it for a while. I was advancing in it, and then I put it off for about a month or so. When I went back to it, I was like, I got kind of lost. I was like, whatever. Right. But ultimately, it's not that long of a game. And because the structure of it was based around the design of a Game Boy game. So I feel, in my opinion, that with the remake that they did on the 3DS, that they fleshed it out a little bit too much and it's padded out too much. And so after a while, I was kind of like, okay, let's just kind of wrap this up, right? Because it was starting to get a little monotonous as the level designs is pretty good. The power ups you get on it are pretty rewarding, right? When you get them. I just felt that it dragged out for a little bit too long as you're just trying to find these Metroids. And so because of that, it kind of became a little boring. Towards the end, there was some pretty cool boss fights. There's one particular where you fight like this kind of like a big old machine kind of looking thing, and that was pretty cool. The very last boss fight on it too, I'll say, that was actually really cool too. I remember, because again, I'm playing it on the small 3DS, and the little rubber thing around the analog stick kept coming off, and I was like, oh no, not right now, right? Because I'm trying to like make really precise shots and all. But anyways, it's pretty good. And honestly, though, I need to go back and beat this fan game. I think I will like the fan game more than the official Nintendo version. So just, that's just my opinion, right? From what I played of it, I still need to beat the fan one to make that final conclusion. But yeah, just to kind of give you an idea, right, of how good this fan game was. My understanding is that this dude, Milton Guasti, I heard somewhere that he ended up getting hired, though, to, I believe, to the team that does, I'm trying to find it here, actually. I think he went on to do, be a level designer or something like that for, like, the Ori and the Blind Forest games. Or maybe Will of the Wisp, something like that. So, at the very least, I believe he did end up finding some kind of work. But okay, anyways, that was more than I thought I would say about those two games there. All right, but multi-plat games, though, that came out this year. So one of them was this really great remake, it's like a remake / remaster, because, it's the same game. It just looks a lot different, but it's Wonder Boy, The Dragon's Trap. So the original Wonder Boy, it was called Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap, back on the Sega Master System that came out in, I talked about that game in the year 1987 or 88, around that time frame. Really great game. One of my favorite games on the Sega Master System. It's one of the few adventure-style Metroidvania games that came out on that system. And just a great game overall. So they redid it. It's pretty much kind of the same game, because it even has a button that you can push on where it changes the art style from like the really nice, clean looking animated and cartoony style, right, of the remake. Or you can just go right back to the old pixelated Sega Master System graphics. But other than that, everything else, like the foundation of the game and all, pretty much the same. And it's, it's really great looking. The game's amazing. I highly recommend you play it. So just want to give it a bit of a shout out. And also because it came out this year too. But some story-driven games. And speaking of Telltale games that we were talking about earlier, we got a couple of them from them this year. So we had The Walking Dead Season 3 that came out this year. I haven't played that season. I feel like I need to finish it just because I really loved the first season. Season 2 was great. Not as good as Season 1, but still great. I feel like I just need to finish it because there was this one and then another season that came out just to kind of see how it all concludes. Honestly, I never really heard much about Season 3 and 4, if they were considered like good or not. I don't really hear much about them, but I feel like I just need to play them just to see how Clementine's story finally finishes out. But then we also had Guardians of the Galaxy Telltale games. This one is actually pretty cool. Kind of, again, the same sort of setup, right? It's a story-driven game. You're making choices, limited gameplay. I beat the first episode of the season, right? Because I believe there's 5 episodes in the season, and I beat the first episode, and it's pretty cool. Me being a kind of a big Marvel fan, it's cool. So I'd be definitely curious to continue playing this one. The personalities of, Star-Lord, Rocket, Gamora, Drax, and all, kind of reminiscent to what you see in the movie, right, and all, but also its own thing too. And so it's just a fun new way of seeing these characters. But another game that came out this year, and it's actually one of my more favorite games of the year too also, is this walking simulator / puzzle game, story-driven game, whatever you want to call it. But it's What Remains of Edith Finch. And just a very unique title. And, it's not a lot of gameplay in it. You're just walking simulator, right? You're just walking along through this house, and the concept is that you are a family member of this Finch family, and you're going to this big property that your family has to unravel a mystery, or right, that's all I'll say about it. It's not that long of a game. It's only like about 2 hours, 3 hours or so, but just wonderfully told, very creative on how it tells each story that it has in it, and very unique. So if you want to experience like a really well done story driven game, highly recommend this game. I don't want to say much more about it because again, it's pretty short. So anything that I could talk about it might spoil it. Best if you go into it blind. A wonderful time. If you, like I said, if you like story driven games, I feel like you would absolutely love this game. It's really well done. There's a cool little nod to a certain popular movie that came out in the 80s, I'll say. Yeah, I just thought it was so cool how they did that. But anyways, next game is Little Nightmares. And so this is sort of like kind of plays like those cinematic platformers where it's a platforming game, not a lot of action in it, but a lot of like platforming and puzzle solving, kind of along the lines of games we've talked about before, like Limbo and Inside. Really cool graphics. Has a kind of an art style and a design of almost something like Tim Burton. And it's just really creative, very fun game. Definitely fun to play during Halloween time. And it's kind of creepy too, right? It's some of the design elements on it are pretty frightening, but very cool little platformer. It's now had several sequels after this. Excuse me, after this one, but I've only put some time into this one, and I can say at least for this one here, it's really well done, and highly recommend it. But we had some fighting games though come out this year, and so starting with there was Marvel versus Capcom Infinite. I remember this game wasn't getting the best reception. It's basically a follow up to like the Marvel versus Capcom fighting game series. And so, I mean, versus Capcom 1, 2, and 3 are pretty good. I mean, part 2 especially was like kind of like the GOAT when it comes to that series. And part 3 was pretty good too also. And part 3 went to when they're using like 3D graphics now. I really did enjoy that one. This one though, I haven't played it, but I heard that it really simplified the gameplay is my understanding, and also probably because of licensing and all, that they couldn't use certain characters like I think like Wolverine, and I mean it added things like Captain Marvel and Ultron and all, which is cool, but it took away some other characters that have been kind of a staple in the Marvel versus Capcom fighting game series. But I think again a lot of it has to do that right in 2017 we're kind of in the thick of like the MCU cinematic movies that were coming out, and so I'm sure there was a lot of licensing and all going back and forth as far as what characters you can use and not use, and a lot of different other entertainment mediums, right, for Marvel. So that's my understanding of it. Like I said, I've never played it. Maybe I might try to give it a shot at some point if I can find it somewhere for cheap or free, but yeah, it did come out this year. But on the other side of the comic book spectrum, for DC Comics, we had a really great game, and this is for Injustice 2. This is the follow-up from Injustice, Gods Among Us, or I think that's what it's subtitled. And yeah, so basically this is made by NetherRealm Studios again. So the gameplay is very reminiscent of like the Mortal Kombat games, only now you're DC superheroes. And yeah, I really like this game. It has a story mode to it and all, which is really entertaining and really well done. I was surprised with the story mode of this, and I was like, okay, this is like watching like a really kick-ass DC animated movie. Great acting across the board, good writing, just overall, I was really impressed with it. And you get a huge roster of characters. It's I mean, everyone from obviously the Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman and those, but then you get some other oddities like Gorilla Grodd is in this. Let's see, what was one of the other characters? Scarecrow was in it. I can't think of him off the top of my head, but I just remember there was some characters in there that was kind of surprising to see. You can also, there's like a way to play as the Ninja Turtles as well too, as like some of the bonus characters. I think even Sub-Zero. But yeah, great fighting game. The fighting game engine on this is really cool. Again, really great story mode to it. incredible graphics. The super moves you can pull off on this are really entertaining to watch. And I mean, if you love fighting games in general, superheroes or anything like that, it's a very worthwhile game. I really enjoyed it. But then we also had Tekken 7, so the seventh game in the mainline series here for Tekken from Namco. This game is pretty cool. It's not amongst my favorite Tekken games, but I mean it's Tekken also at the same time. If you're playing Tekken for the multiplayer, you're gonna have a fun time. If you're playing Tekken for like the single player, I don't know. I feel like after like the Tekken 5, when it came to like single player modes in these games, I don't know, something about it just felt a little lackluster, but maybe that's just me, I'm just a bit old school on those there, but not a bad game. I mean, like I said, the fighting engine in it and all, it's Tekken still, so if you've enjoyed Tekken games, you'll get some kind of fun out of this. All right, but now we're going to jump over to these two games which just left a huge mark on the video game industry, and that is for let's see. Actually, before I continue to talk here, let's see. 2017. Not very professional here. But it's basically the Players Unknown game and Fortnite. Of course, if I can. I thought I had it up here. I usually try to keep my stories up here that I'm going to be talking about. Oh my god, no, it's not Interstate 291 that I'm looking up. Oh my gosh. 217 video games. Okay. La, 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 la. Okay, here we go. So starting off with this PUBG Battleground, so again known as Players Unknown Battleground. So this game in Fortnite became huge. Everything that we're seeing about live service games and all, or free-to-play games or battle arena shooters and all that, I mean, it's already been kind of starting. These two games really exploded it. So I'm not into these kind of games, but I wanted to talk about these just because, again, I know how big they are in this, as far as when you're looking at the overall video game industry. So starting with this game here, PUBG Battles on the Ground, previously known as Players Unknown Battlegrounds, is a 2017 battle royale video game published by Krafton and developed by Krafton's PUBG Studios. The game, which was inspired by the Japanese film Battle Royale, came out in the year 2000, is based on previous mods created by Brendan Player Unknown Green for other games and expanded into a standalone game under Green's creative direction. Played from either a third-person or first-person perspective, up to 100 players parachute onto an island where they are tasked to scavenge for weapons and equipment to kill other players while avoiding getting killed themselves. The available safer area of the game's maps decreases in size over time, directing surviving players into an ever-tightening space to force encounters. So it was first released via Steam's Early Access Beta program in March 2017, with a full release in December 2017. The same month, Microsoft Studios released it for Xbox One via the X1 Game Preview or Xbox Game Preview program, with a full release coming in September 2018. Afterwards, the game was ported over to the PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X and S, and PlayStation 5, and the Stadia streaming console, and it spawned a mobile version for Android and iOS as well too. The game is continuously developed under the game as a service model and has been free to play for all platforms since January 2022. So that's that game there. And then, so the other game too also, right? They came out, I'm pretty sure it came out this year too. Let me actually double check, because I could have sworn that I saw it came out this year, but now I'm not seeing much mention of it in 2017. Okay, so Fortnite. Sure, everyone knows about Fortnite, right? If you're a gamer, you at least know about it. You either play it a lot or you know about it. If you're a parent, you might have gone through a phase where your kid was doing the Fortnite dance and you would see it all over the place. So I think a lot of people just know the name Fortnite now. So Fortnite is a 2017 online video game and game platform developed and released by Epic Games. It is available in 7 distinct game mode versions that otherwise share the same general gameplay and game engine. Fortnite Battle Royale, a battle royale game in which up to 100 players fight to be the last person standing. Fortnite Save the World, a cooperative hybrid tower defense shooter and survival game in which up to 4 players fight off zombie-like creatures and defend objects with traps and fortifications they can build. Fortnite Creative, in which players are given the freedom to create worlds and battle arenas. Lego Fortnite, an open world game collection divided between survival game Lego Fortnite Odyssey and social game Lego Fortnite Brick Life. Rocket Racing, a racing game. Fortnite Festival, a rhythm game. And Fortnite Ballistic, a tactical first-person shooter, currently in early access. All game modes are free to play. Wow, I didn't know how that many. So it was first released on July 25th of 2017 in early access. Oh, yeah. I mean, again, and one of the things that really kind of continued making this game popular, from my understanding, is just all the different like skins you can get in the game. I mean, I've seen everything from like Star Wars to Marvel characters to other like popular pop culture franchises that you can outfit your character in. And so I mean, just a little bit here that I'm seeing here. So the reception of it, so the Save the World mode achieved over 1 million players by August of 2017, just before the Battle Royale release. So Fortnite Battle Royale became a significant financial success for Epic Games, leading them to separate the teams between Save the World and Battle Royale to provide better support for both modes. Within 2 weeks of release, over 10 million players had played the mode. And by June 2018, just after the Nintendo Switch release, had reached 125 million players. Let's see. Revenue from Battle Fortnite Royale during the first half of 2018 has been estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars per month. Was total 2018 revenue estimated at 2.4 billion by analysis firm Superdata. Fortnite Battle Royale has become a cultural phenomenon, with several celebrities reporting they play the game, and athletes using Fortnite emotes as victory celebrations. A notable streaming event in March 2018 was streamer Ninja playing Fortnite alongside Drake, Travis, Kim.com, and Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, broke viewership records for Twitch today, and led Epic arranging a Fortnite Battle Royale program with 50 pairs of streamers and professional game players matched with celebrities at E3 2018 in June of 2018. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, it became huge. I mean, because so it said there that rapper Travis Scott played alongside, I guess, some streamer, but didn't he also have like a concert too, like within the Fortnite? I mean, it's become huge, right? Now, we've talked recently, though, about how its revenues are starting to go down, right? But this was the start of it, though. And it just absolutely blew up, right? Was getting so much recognition. And, but obviously, right, when you get that big, there's also a lot of concerns with it. So just, some things here is that it says here, as I'm reading up some information on it. So there has been growing concern over Fortnite Battle Royale's draw towards young children, emphasized with the release of the mobile client. Parents and teachers have expressed concern that students are being distracted and drawn away from school work due to playing Fortnite. Concerns have also been raised about the impact of playing games involving repeated depictions of gun violence may have on young children. I mean, that's a different that's another conversation there as far as like video games and violence and all. It's been debunked so many times. But, I'm going to say, though, that there still might be some level of truth to it, though, right? Ultimately, I think it comes down, you got to parent your kids. You got to parent your kids. And by that, I don't mean like just completely be a hard ass on them or what, right? You got to discipline your kids. You got to love your kids, right? You got to be willing to hear them out. You got to be willing to meet them also where they're at, right? Well, at the same time, keeping that level of authority over them. And I mean, so many times I've seen that when kids get so lost in these games and all, a lot of it too also is that the parents aren't really being involved with them as well too. It doesn't mean you have to sit down with them and play Fortnite or whatever. You just got to know what your kid is doing, what your kid's all about. And I know that you're not going to be able to always do that. I'm aware of that now. My kids are getting older, that sometimes they're going to kind of do things, on their own. But you got to be involved, right? You got to be, you got to be in your kid's life, basically. Not to say that that's, bad things still can't happen. Like I said, right? Sometimes having kids is very unpredictable. But I still feel that when it comes down to it, it is your responsibility as a parent to be involved in their lives and all. And I think that that is what makes the more of an impact as far as how they turn out to be, as opposed to, if they end up going down a bad path strictly because of video games. Again, I'm not saying that video games may not have a bad effect. I know it's been debunked a lot of times, but I'm not also going to completely shut that out. And again, this is just my personal opinion, but I still feel, though, that you as a parent have more of a role in that, of how they're going to grow up, right, than over them just playing video games, right? I'm not saying that little kids should be playing Fortnite or anything like that either. I'm just kind of saying, right, and all just being a parent is going to make a bigger impact on that. But let's see. All right, but that's those two games there. Again, wanted to give them some attention just because of how big they are. But we also got I think they're called like computer RPGs, CRPGs, or something like that. But Divinity Original Sin 2, made by Larian Studios. I don't know much about this game. I just know that it was really popular and a very involving RPG. Yeah, and that's about as much as I know. I know it's like some kind of a Dragon Quest, Dungeons and Dragons kind of style, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I just know it's really popular though. We had Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. I don't think I talked about the original or the Wolfenstein that came out on the X generation too, because I think we had it like about a year or two back. Yeah, because it was on the newer systems, right? But anyways, Wolfenstein had a little run here in this generation, and I never played any of them. The only Wolfenstein game I really got into was a little bit like the original one, well, the first person shooter one. And then I did get into the Wolfenstein Return to Castle Wolfenstein, I think on the original Xbox. But after that, I never really played these Wolfenstein games. But one game that I did play a little of, somewhat recently too, is Prey. So Prey is interesting because if we go back to 2006 2005 or 6, 2006, I think I briefly mentioned about a game called Prey also that was on the Xbox 360. It's a first-person shooter. You control this Native American character, Tommy, and you end up going in this UFO and taking on some aliens and all. Really cool game, really original game. I really enjoyed that game. There was supposed to be a sequel that never really came out. And I remember they were even showing like the cinematic trailer for what the Prey sequel was going to look like. And that cinematic trailer looked pretty cool, actually. I remember thinking, I was like, oh, wow, that actually looks kind of cool. But eventually, like, it was stuck in development hell, and they restructured the game and all that to ultimately to the game that we got this year in 2017. And so what it ended up becoming is sort of like this sci-fi immersive sim game where it's a first-person perspective, but it's kind of along the lines of something like the Deus Ex games. And it's really cool, actually. The bit that I played of this, it seems like a game I could really get into. A lot of cool options on it, a cool futuristic setting to it. Very different than the Prey game from the Xbox 360, which is, I wouldn't even know if you would consider it the same franchise anymore. I'm not sure where that all files in, like into the lore of these two games and all. But either way, though, really cool game. If you want like a cool sci-fi immersive sim game along the lines of like the Deus Ex games and all, where it's more of a slow burn of a game and all, where you really got to think as far as like how to pass certain objectives and all, highly recommend checking out this game. It's one that I've added towards the top of my backlog that I want to try to get to at some point. Really had my interest a bit that I've played of it. Makes you think a lot, because I played it for a bit, kind of got stuck on this one part. I was like, oh, okay, I really need to use my brain power here, right, to try to figure this out. But yeah, I mean, it's very cool, though. I highly recommend checking this game if any of that sounds interesting to you. But then we had The Evil Within 2, which is a follow-up to the Evil Within game. And so, yeah, really cool game. It's I haven't played this one. I mean, I really enjoyed the first one, and so been curious to checking out this one as well too. Just haven't gotten around to it, but definitely from what I understand, it's a pretty cool game overall, though. Let's see. Sorry, I was actually trying to look up something here on the side. Okay, here we go. But yeah, The Evil Within 2 definitely seems like a cool game. But I was looking up on the side, though, here. It's for the next game I wanted to talk about, and that's for Star Wars Battlefront 2. And the reason I wanted to talk about this game is, so it's a action shooter developed by DICE, published by Electronic Arts. And so it's based on this Battlefront series that has been ongoing, right, for the Star Wars franchise. And so it's multiplayer and whatnot. The reason I want to talk about it, though, just to follow up here on something that I'm reading here. So the game was released worldwide on November 17th, 2017 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows. But Battlefield 2 received mixed reviews from critics, with praise for the multiplayer gameplay, balancing visuals, and variety, but criticism for its single-player modes, campaign, microtransactions, and progression system. The game was also subject to widespread criticism regarding the status of loot boxes, which could give players substantially gameplay advantages if purchased with real money. In response, EA disabled microtransactions in the game. So yeah, and that's the reason why I wanted just to touch base on this game a bit, is because of that there, right? This game, I mean, we were already starting to see it with a lot of these predatory sort of things in these games now, with microtransactions and loot boxes and all, and almost like encouraging gambling and whatnot, especially for like if younger players are playing this. And yeah, so let's see. It's a little bit here that I'll read on this. So microtransaction controversy. So during the pre-release beta trials, the game's publisher, EA, was criticized by gamers and the gaming press for introducing a loot box monetization scheme that gave players substantial gameplay advantages through items purchased in-game with real money. Responding to the controversy, developers had adjusted the number of in-game items a player receives through playing the game. However, after the game went to pre-release, several players and journalists who received a pre-release copy of the game reported various controversial gameplay features, such as rewards being unrelated to the player's performance in the game. The poorly weighted reward system, combined with a weak inactivity detection, allowed many players to use rubber bands to tightly tie their game controllers for automatically farming points during multiplayer battles, ruining the experience for other active online players. Whoa, what is this? So let's see, on November 12, 2017, a Reddit user complained that although they spent US $80 to purchase the deluxe edition of the game, Darth Vader remained inaccessible for play, and the use of this character required 60,000 credits. Players estimated that it would take 40 hours of grinding to accumulate enough credits to unlock a single hero. In response to the community's backlash, EA community team defended the controversial changes by saying their intent to make users earn credits to unlock heroes was to give users a sense of pride and accomplishment after unlocking a hero. This response frustrated many Reddit users, resulting in hundreds of negative replies and comment scores more than and a common score of more than negative 660,000 as of December 2025, making it the most downvoted comment in the site's history. In 2019, the comment was included into the Guinness World Records. In response to the community's outrage, EA lowered the cost of credits to unlock heroes by 75%. However, the credits awarded for completing the campaign were also reduced. On the day before release, EA disabled microtransactions entirely, citing players' concerns that they gave buyers unfair advantages. They stated their intent to reintroduce them at a later date and after unspecified changes had been made. The uproar from social media and poor press release on its microtransactions had a negative impact on EA's share price, which dropped by 2.5% on the launch day of the game. Analysts in Wall Street also lowered their expectation of the game's financial prospects. A Wall Street analyst writing for CNBC noted how video games are still the cheapest entertainment medium per hour of use, and even with the added microtransactions, playing Battlefront 2 was still notably cheaper than paying to see the theatrical release of a film. By the end of November 17th, EA had lost $3 billion in stock value since the launch of the game. On March 16th, 2018, developer DICE announced an overhaul for the progression and economic system. Loot crates will only contain credits, one on the in-game currencies and cosmetic items, while crystals, the other in-game currency, can be bought solely to purchase cosmetic items for the characters in the games. Progression for player abilities or star cards is now linear, as players must play a certain class or hero to unlock a skill point for that trooper or hero, which can then be used to purchase a new card or upgrade one the player already owns. The first part of this update was released on March 21st, which included permanently unlocking all heroes and vehicles for a player regardless of progression, while the second part was released on April. But then it looks like even the government got involved, with the Belgium gambling regulator announced that it was investigating the game alongside Overwatch, so kind of a company too. So, yeah, like I said, wanted to get that touch base there, right, on this and all. As you know, the good thing there was a lot of like pushback on this, because again, if it was up to these companies, they would want to do this kind of stuff, right, just to rip people off, and it's yeah. I just remember when I was seeing these stories and all, a lot of things that we've already been kind of talking about, live service, this kind of like practice in these games and all, is that it just started kind of putting me off on a lot of things, right? For video games. Throughout these years, there's still amazing games, right? Like we're going to talk about a lot of cool games here in a bit still, but it's just started kind of like not turning me off the hobby, but just started becoming annoying, basically, right? That it was just unfortunate on where the industry was going, given how much I've loved the industry prior to this, right? But yeah, such is the way of the industry, right? But for some other multi-platform games here, so we got an Assassin's Creed game this year, Assassin's Creed Origins. So they didn't do a game last year, and that was because they were rehauling the franchise to what we got this year. So Assassin's Creed Origin takes place in ancient Egypt. I believe the character you control in this, his name is Balak, I think. And it's a pretty cool game. I've played a bit into it. Really stunning to look at. I mean, the graphics are really impressive. But the gameplay, I don't know. It's, the parkour's still there and it feels really smooth, but the combat and, it definitely went in an RPG direction where it just seems like sometimes some of these enemies take a long time to kill, and then, I don't know, it just seems kind of off for this kind of game. And then all the like the menu system and the UI, it kind of put me off on it, right? After playing it for a while. And I was like, I don't know if I really like this new style. A lot of people seem to like it though, but I don't know. I know that the series was starting to get a little tired, but I kind of preferred the older version of Assassin's Creed. And yeah, it seems like that's the case nowadays too, because with Black Flag, they're kind of going back to that old school route, right? Instead of like this RPG style that we started seeing with this version here. But for the most part, though, it was pretty well received. Again, it looks pretty stunning, especially now that it's had a 60 frames per second patch and all. Really stunning to look at, really cool, like to scale the, pyramids of Egypt, a gorgeous landscape. And from what I've played of it, a pretty cool story overall. So definitely not a bad game. It's just from what I've liked of Assassin's Creed before, not kind of the direction I wish the series would have gone to. But, I know it has a lot of fans, at least at this point, right? For what Assassin's Creed was doing. And it probably was the right thing to do, right? To change up the formula, because with the previous one we had, which was Assassin's Creed Syndicate, I believe, 2 years ago, it was starting to get a little stale for some people. So understandably what they did, right? But we also had the Call of Duty for this year, so we've already talked a bit about it. It's Call of Duty World War II, or just known as WW2. And this, I've actually recently started playing this game. I did a YouTube short of it fairly recently, and yeah, I mean the recreation that it has of like D-Day at the beginning is really stunning and frightening. Also, definitely a step up from what they did with the Medal of Honor game Frontline back in the day, and I mean, it seems like a cool game. I don't hear much about the single player campaign on this one, but from what I've played, it's pretty cool. So this is a Call of Duty game that I'll probably want to try to go through and at least just experience a single player, because what I played of it, it seems pretty cool. But they went back in this direction just because, with the one from last year, the Infinite Warfare, that went very futuristic. I think there was some backlash and all where they wanted to go back to the more either modern warfare, right, or even back to World War II like they did in this one. But yeah, what I played of it, I mean, it seems pretty cool. And so definitely something that I would want to get into at some point. But then we had Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, and definitely a great game. So this is one of the Japanese games, right? And all that I was talking about earlier that started bringing Japanese gaming back into the limelight. So Resident Evil had a bit of a fallout with Resident Evil 6 that we talked about back in, 2012, I believe. So they went back to the drawing board and all, and ultimately they went back to their survival horror roots. And very cool game. It's creepy. This is the creepiest Resident Evil for me. This game is frightening. It's they almost like they took like what they were trying to do with that PT demo that I talked about a few episodes back. But it's pretty horrific. I mean, the graphics in this and the setting and all, it's very gruesome. It's very like grindhouse like. It's and it's different from what we've seen Resident Evil before, but I like that though. The first person perspective really changed things up on how, in your face now the horror was. And I mean, just seeing these, like when you open up a fridge and you see all this nasty stuff in there. And I mean, the graphics are pretty gruesome. And I believe it was the first game that was using the RE engine, which has been Capcom's been using on a lot of their games nowadays. And it's a pretty cool engine where it can allow for pretty detailed graphics running at 60 frames per second. And while sometimes the characters look a little Silicon Valley like, a little plasticky almost is the way I kind of look at it, but either way though, the really nice graphics though, and it's a really good engine. And yeah, I mean, I really like this game a lot. It's among one of my more favorite Resident Evil games. I've said before that for me Resident Evil is best when it sticks to its survival horror roots, as opposed to like action. And that's what I really liked about this one. It does kind of end up leaning towards going in a more action-oriented route towards the end, like a lot of Resident Evil games do. But the majority of the game, though, I think is still very grounded in this very horrific setting as you're entering this mansion of the Baker family, and just makes for some really gruesome scenarios. But really like that though, and yeah, this is a great return to form for the series. I'm glad they went back in this direction, because ever since this game, Resident Evil has been on a roll, right? We're going to talk more about Resident Evil games here in the next few years, and it started again with this game. So it's kind of like how Resident Evil got its groove back. And it started with this one. Excellent game. Frightening as hell. I haven't played it in VR. I never had the VR headset for the PlayStation. I heard it's pretty frightening though, and I don't know if I could play this game in VR, because just playing it on its own, I mean, this game like fucked with me. Where I was like, this game is horrific. But I love it for that. Right? It's great. Resident Evil 7. If for some reason you haven't played it, definitely recommend it. I mean, you can buy it on pretty much everything now. I mean, it's on the Switch too, also now too. So yeah, just an excellent game. But then finishing up with multi-plat games here is Hollow Knight. Now, Hollow Knight got a lot of recognition when it came out this year. It's just being a really groundbreaking Metroidvania game that came out. I remember I bought this game roughly around a little bit after. Well, no, I wouldn't have bought it in 2017 because I bought it for the Switch but I didn't get the Switch until 2019, I think. So I didn't get it here at launch, but I bought it a few years afterwards, and then it just kind of sat in my library because I played it at first, right? And I was like, okay, I was like, what's the big deal with this game, right? Because it was getting a lot of accolades, this year, and I love Metroidvania games. But I was playing it, I was like, oh, this game's a little hard. I was like, I don't know if I'm into this. But just last year, I finally got into it because of Silk Song. I was like, well, let me beat this. Excuse me, let me beat this game first before I even try Silk Song, because all the hype that was around Silk Song. And well, if you've been listening up to this point, everything that I've been saying, then you already know my journey with Hollow Knight, right? Because again, I was talking about Hollow Knight. It was around the month of September of last year that I really got hooked on this game, and I ended up beating it. Well, I got one of the endings anyways, and absolutely loved it. It's an incredible game, perfectly developed with precise controls, excellent gameplay, awesome, rewarding Metroidvania gameplay, cool setting, incredible music. Absolutely love it. Where the power-ups really feel like they make a difference. One of the best gaming maps of all time, and incredible lore and atmosphere. So much about this game that I absolutely love, and literally I just played it last year for the first time, and yeah, it's absolutely incredible. I love this game so much, and this is where it came out. And this year, developed by 2 people, I believe, or 3 people, right? Because they're also the composer, something like that. It's a small team. I'm kind of tired, so I kind of forgot. But yeah, just overall an incredible game. Absolutely love Hollow Knight, and I've been kind of itching to get into Silk Song. I started the game, played a little bit about it. But then again, I got sidetracked with doing some other games. I'm trying to going through my little Final Fantasy VII little, oh my God, what am I trying to say? Going through a Final Fantasy VII session here, right? As in anticipation for for them announcing Part 3 at some point soon here in the next several months would be my guess. So that's been kind of my focus now as far as what I've been playing. By the way, if you ever want to see my playthrough of that, it's on my YouTube channel, Arcade Amigo. But it's sometime after that, though. Once I get done with all that, then I do think I will get into Silk Song, because I really, really liked Hollow Knight. All right, but then jumping into some of the exclusives, though. So going over to the Xbox One, we didn't have a whole lot. At least, like I said, what I kind of went through. Obviously, I'm missing a lot of games, right? When I go through my little series here, this is just the 2 standouts that I saw. So at this time, Cuphead was exclusive to the Xbox One. Well, also on PC. But as far as consoles goes, it was only on the Xbox One. And this is an incredible little running gun shooter. I've talked about it before already. My daughters have really gotten into Cuphead, so they got me into Cuphead, and really they just want to see me play because, the game is very difficult for them, but they love seeing the characters, the animation, which is incredible. I mean, the 2D animation on this and the sort of like nostalgic sort of like 1930s and 40s animation style is truly unique. And I mean, the setting to this game and the character designs and all are absolute joy to look at. They're so well animated and so creative, but very like kind of evil though, right? Because at first you look at the game, it looks a little cutesy, but then you really start playing it, you're like, oh, this is kind of gruesome almost, right? But just an incredible art design to this. I mean, kudos to the animators on this game, the way they pull it off. I recommend watching like a making of this game that you can find on YouTube. It's really stunning how they pulled off the animation to this. One of the more unique looking games out there, and but it's got like really cool running gun gameplay, but it's a bit of a boss rush game, right? Originally, when I was hearing about this game, I thought it was going to be something along the lines of like Gunstar Heroes or Contra, where it's run and gun shooting levels, and then you fight a boss. Well, no, the majority of it is fighting bosses, and then it has some running gun levels. But the bosses are so well designed and so much fun to play. You get a lot of cool power-ups to try to take them down, and it is a very challenging game, though. I will say that, right? Very challenging, but it is a lot of fun to play, though, and a lot of it is pattern memorization or figuring out their attacks. So it is very doable, but it is very challenging, though. It'll keep you on your toes and all, and I've been still slowly working my way to the game. I keep seeing this one particular dragon boss come up on like one of the hardest bosses in this game. I almost beat him the other day. So kind of makes me feel a little proud of myself where I've not completely lost my cognitive motor skills, I guess, because I'm still, I was like, okay, I got this guy, and all. But yeah, very fun game to play. It's, you can play it in 2 players, and it's come out with a DLC fairly recently too. Yeah, a lot of fun. If you like difficult, but really fun, polished run and gun shooting games or boss rush games with incredible art style. For some reason you haven't, check out Cuphead. It's one of the most unique games you'll ever play. But then for the other exclusive, we had Forza Motorsport 7. So more Forza, right? Forza was just becoming like almost like an annual thing between Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon series, right? They were kind of going back and forth on them almost each year. And so this is part 7 of the simulation series. I don't know a whole lot about it other than that it's another Forza game. And not a bad thing though. Again, these games are really well done, if you're into racing simulation games. Jumping over to the PlayStation 4, we had... Just wanted to give a shout out to this game. I don't think it was very popular and all, but just because it's my boy Guts and Berserk. So we had Berserk and the Band of the Hawk. This game is kind of done in that Dynasty Warriors sort of game style, where you're taking on like a legion of enemies coming at you, and it's a bit monotonous, and you're just smashing a button, really just taking on waves of enemies. But because it has a whole Berserk story and background and all, it's pretty cool. The graphics are pretty well done, right? So I would say as a game, it's all right. If you're a Berserk fan, I'd recommend getting it just because you get all the cool Berserk stuff in it, right? But again, just kind of know that unless you like Dynasty Warrior style gameplay, then, pretty cool for you. But otherwise, right, I would just maybe get it if you're a hardcore Berserk fan, right? So, but then we had Gravity Rush 2, which I don't know a whole lot about this series. I just know that it's been pretty popular on the PlayStation game systems. But yeah, it came out this year. I need to try these games, maybe see what it's all about. We got Neo, and so the Dark Souls games started becoming like a big thing now, right, during the stretch here. So we started seeing some spin-offs or not, I'm sorry, not, well, yeah, kind of spin-offs, but also games from other developers that were inspired by Dark Souls style gameplay. Neo was one of the more popular ones. This one was developed by Team Ninja. It takes place in you're a samurai of some sort, but dealing with these demons and all. And it's pretty cool. I've played it a bit. It's difficult, Souls-like games. I don't know if it's something that I really get into this series, but I know that a lot of people that like this kind of gameplay really love this game. And so, yeah, I would say that if you are a big Souls-like fan and you want to get into another kind of game, if you haven't played this one by chance, sounds like it's a pretty good game. So, again, very dark setting with like this dark Japanese samurai lore kind of what I get from it, right, from the bit that I've played. The main character kind of looks like Geralt from The Witcher, just like in Japan. But pretty cool game though overall from what I've seen of it. Excuse me. Then we had Nier Automata. I hear so much about this game and how good it is. I don't have any experience with it, but I feel like it's a game I need to play because it seems like it's inspired by a lot of things that I really like. Even something like Panzer Dragoon is what I've heard. So I don't have a lot to say on it other than that it seems to be some kind of like a action / role-playing game of some sort that meshes a bunch of different genres. So I definitely need to check this game out. I want to play it at some point soon. We had East 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. I haven't really talked much about the East games. Another series that I've played a bit of like East books 1 and 2, but I haven't really messed around with any of the other East games, and it just feels like a series that I should play as well at some point. But Part 8 came out this year, and from what I saw, it seems to be one of the more higher rated and recognized East games in the series. So, yeah, there you go. Came out this year on the PlayStation 5. It eventually got ported to other systems. Actually, a lot of these games got ported over to other systems from what I understand, but originally they came out first on the Xbox. So like, for example, the next one, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. So this game came out first on the PlayStation, and it was kind of being advertised as an indie game with a AAA game look to it. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is a very unique game. It's so you play Senua, and so she's from like the Viking days, right? And so she's a warrior going out to fight these enemies. Very cool backdrop to it. Again, it's like this kind of Nordic Viking setting, and that's all cool. Senua, she's a pretty cool character. What really makes this game unique is, first of all, the graphics and the motion capture on the game. The expressions of this character, right, are very realistic. And so, like, the motion capture that they did and the actress that plays Senua did a really incredible job. And so, this game is developed by Ninja Theory. So, Ninja Theory has a certain style to their games, right? If you go back to, like, Heavenly Sword, Enslaved, Journey to the West, and then DMC, the Devil May Cry game, and they all have a unique style that I like their style. Their games aren't always the most polished and best games, but the setting, the atmosphere, and the art style of the games, I really do enjoy. And so this game, it looks incredible when you first see it. Once you actually start playing it, you do kind of see that, oh, okay, I can see why they call it kind of like an indie game with a big budget look. Because the game is a bit simplistic, right? As far as like what you're doing in the game, you're just kind of, it's almost like a walking simulator in a way. You're solving some puzzles, which they get a little complicated, but not too bad. It's a fairly short game. The combat is not bad, but it's a bit simplistic. But it looks stunning though, right? But again, you can kind of see why they advertise it that way. So all of that is cool. The interesting thing though that they did with this game, and it's interesting if you watch like the making of, is that they wanted to emphasize on like mental health issues and all. And so as you're playing the game, you're constantly hearing like these voices, right? And so they actually recommend that you play this game with headphones, because when you're playing, I mean, you can obviously hear it if you have your surround sound set up or through the TV, but when you have the headphones on, you hear like these voices just like, that really feel like they're all, they're inside your mind. And because apparently this character, Senua, suffers from like some kind of she's psychotic or whatever the term is. Where's my wife? This is what she does for her career, where she's involved with like mental health and as a therapist and all. And so I'm sure she'd probably like correct me on the terms that I'm trying to use here, but ultimately though, right, she's hearing a bunch of voices and all. And so it's very unique in the approach that they took, right, of sometimes like what people suffer through, right, when they're constantly hearing voices, right. And definitely brings an interesting element to the game, because it's very weird how it's fascinating in a way, but it's weird though, where you're taking this mental health subject but putting it into this character that's back in the ancient Nordic Viking days. Nordic. Am I saying that right? And so it's interesting, right? But it's cool though. It's like they're constantly telling you like, over here, don't go over there. Why would you do that? You're wrong. You're failing. Oh my God, you're never going to be get out of it. It's like you're a failure. And, it's like, and so the whole time you're hearing this in your head, and you're like, oh my God, it feels like I'm being fucked with here. Right. So it kind of emphasizes the struggle that this character is going through, right, in the story, which is probably why it's called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, right? But very interesting game. If you're looking for a unique experience, a story-driven experience, more so than a gameplay experience, I would highly recommend this. Eventually, this game got ported over to the Xbox One, and then Microsoft bought Ninja Theory. So it's since still come out on the PlayStation, right? But it kind of felt more of an Xbox game afterwards. But the original one debuted on the PlayStation 4 in this year, and so very unique game that I would give a shot if you want to try something different, if for some reason you haven't played it. But then also that game that came out originally on the PlayStation 4 later got ported to other systems, but it was a Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. This is an excellent remaster / remake, because it's, and again, this is where it's fallen into that sort of in-between spot, because it's basically the same game because it takes the original three Crash Bandicoot games from the PlayStation. So Crash Bandicoot, or Crash 2 Cortex Strikes Back, I think, and then Crash 3 Warped, but combines them in one package with updated graphics, right, for this generation's time, and just a really joy to look at, really fun to play, the classic platforming gameplay, and it's really well done. And it's I believe it was developed by Toys for Bob, I think is the name of the developer, because Naughty Dog didn't do it. But it plays really well. Excellent repackaging of these games. Really love it. But at the same time though, is also why I think it's also for the argument of like why the original games should still not be delisted, or that they should still be made available. Because while I really enjoyed this version, the platforming does feel different though than in the original PlayStation versions. And honestly, I don't know. I'd have to really kind of play them more side by side, but I think I like the platforming more though on the PlayStation versions, the original one, because this one feels like the window that you have between your jump and I don't know, it feels a little different. Like it feels a little less forgiving. Like this one feels harder, at least for me, what I've played of it. I beat the first one, Crash Bandicoot, in this trilogy here, and I'm still working my way through the second one. But that first one, fuck, it was tough. Like that bridge to nowhere, whatever it's called, where you're going through that bridge. Yeah, man, that stage was it took a lot out of me to try to beat that stage. But it's a lot of fun though. Again, it looks really stunning. It plays really great. I wish it was at 60 frames per second, but it's not. But still really good though, and very colorful. Great addition to your gaming library. At the time, well, again, it would have been PlayStation 4 exclusive, but now you can find it on pretty much anything. So a really great pickup if you're looking for some great platforming action. But we got Gran Turismo Sport also, which I guess I kind of lose track of like 5 and 6. Like, what did I talk about one of these games before? I don't know. Gran Turismo kind of got all over the place here around this time, and the amount of time that there was between releases really started growing and growing that I lost track of it. But I think Gran Turismo Sport was like the next Gran Turismo game, but it's a bit limited as far as like a full release, if I recall right. Honestly, I don't remember much of it. It came out this year. It was some kind of a Gran Turismo game that came out. That's about as much as I can say about it. But we also got Uncharted, The Lost Legacy. And so this is a follow-up to Uncharted 4 at Thieves End, only this time you play as characters Chloe and Nadine. So Chloe, she's been in the series since part 2. Nadine was a new character in part 3. And so you play as them. I believe you play both of them in this game here. And it's sort of like kind of felt like a DLC to Uncharted 4, but also big enough that it was its own release. Only I think it released at a lesser price than like a full budget, full game release. Something like that, I forgot. But I haven't beaten this one yet. It's the only Uncharted game, well, outside of the PlayStation Vita one also, but it's the only console one that I haven't beaten yet. And I mean, it seems like a cool little side story to it, so I'd be definitely interested in playing it. I mean, the graphics look outstanding in it. I mean, it's still using the Uncharted 4 engine, and so I raved about that game last year. It still looks amazing. So I would definitely say that. I mean, sure, if you wanted more Uncharted, right? This would be, again, not a full, it doesn't feel like one of the full Uncharted games, but a cool little side project, right, that they did, and where you get to play as those two characters there. But another Japanese game, though, that came out this year that was pretty highly recognized. So speaking of Japanese games, right? So I talked about before how this year was big on Japanese games. So we had Resident Evil, right, 7. And then like the fighting games, Tekken 7 and Marvel vs. Capcom, I guess to an extent, were pretty popular. Dragon Quest 8 and Metroid on the handheld. And then we had Ys, Neo, Nier Automata, and then this game here, Dragon Quest 11. Well, Dragon Quest 11, it came out in North America in 2018, but it came out in Japan this year. And so it was the next follow-up in the Dragon Quest series, and really incredible. I mean, this game, I haven't quite beaten it yet, but it's really fun. It's like classic JRPG, turn-based combat, but really nice graphics on it though, right? Made for this, modern generation of this time. And it was interesting what they did because there was a console version release. They, again, originally came out on the PlayStation 4 in Japan in 2017, next year in 2018 in North America. But there was also a 3DS version of this game that came out, which is the same game to my understanding, but just, scaled a bit down in graphics and all because, to make it work on the 3DS. But I thought that was interesting what they did with that. And then also the cool thing too is that on the 3DS version, you get to play like a 2D version of the game. So really there was like 3 different versions of this game that you could play. And I thought that was really interesting. And so for a lot of people, this seems to be their favorite Dragon Quest game, and definitely a game that I still need to get through. It's a long game. Dragon Quest games are usually pretty long, but the characters are a lot of fun, great combat, cool story from what I played. It's not hooking me as much as like Dragon Quest 8 or even like what the little bit that I played of 5, but it's still pretty cool though overall, and definitely a series that I want to continue playing. It would later get ported to the other systems, and then also with a more definitive version that came out of this game a few years later. But this is where it originally came out in Japan, right? For Dragon Quest 11. But probably the biggest game, though, as far as like IP on the PlayStation 4 that started this year, at least the bigger budget game, I would say, is So, because usually Sony, the PlayStation during the stretch here was getting a lot of cool exclusives. I mean, really, ever since like 2009 or 10 or so, right, where the PlayStation was just getting a lot of cool exclusives, right? This is the next exclusive game that I got, and or if it wasn't exclusive, like a new entry in a fairly new franchise. But anyways, but this year we got Horizon Zero Dawn, very original game. It was done by Guerrilla Games, who had done the Killzone series before. And so Horizon Zero Dawn is an interesting concept where you play as Aloy. She's like a warrior that is in this, at first glance, it looks like coming to like a primitive world, where you're using bow and arrows, almost like the Stone Age, right? But you take on these huge mechanical, like dinosaur looking enemies. And so part of the lure of this game is, well, first of all, the graphics, because the graphics are outstanding in this game. You know, I remember I was like floored when I first saw this, right? And it was actually one of the games that I could kind of see the difference, right, from playing it on the PlayStation 4 Pro. But not much, right? I already talked about that. But anyway, but on its own, right, the graphics were outstanding in this. And seeing the intricate detail on these robotic dinosaur enemies, right, was truly stunning. I mean, they look like something from like the Michael Bay Transformer movies. But the other part of the allure of this game, though, was what exactly is going on in this world, right? How did this primitive sort of group of humans, a society, live amongst these very technologically advanced dinosaur robot things, right? And so the story is pretty engaging. It's pretty engaging enough, right, on the mystery of all that. Like, how is this world come about, right? And so it's pretty cool, though. And yeah, taking down some of these robotic dinosaurs is truly a lot of fun. Some of them go down fairly easily, but when you're fighting something like a T-Rex, right, and trying to trap it and all, the amount of like weapons that you have at your disposal for like tripwires and bow and arrows and things like that, it's a lot of fun trying to target them on their weak spots and all. It's very fun, very tense. And again, the graphics are truly outstanding. Guerrilla Games knows their shit when it comes to making graphics. Their games are usually amongst one of the more top tier in the industry. And a cool new IP for Sony. I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's like their best IP, but it's cool though. I like Aloy as a character, at least in this one here. And again, the overall story and mystery and how it all unravels and all as you're playing through it is pretty cool. It's definitely like an open world game. You know, it has its missions and all, so it is a bit long. It is, you know, it is a bit of an involving game to get into, but it is a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. There's a remastered version that came out now, right, which it does improve the graphics even further, and now it looks really stunning. But for its time at the time, right, it was even then really incredible looking, amongst one of the best looking games at the time, and definitely a worthy pickup, right, if you had the PlayStation 4 during the stretch here. All right, but let's jump over to what Nintendo was doing, and that was with the Wii U was on its way out, but because we had the Nintendo Switch come on board. And so the Nintendo Switch was a game changer in the video game industry. Brought Nintendo back into relevance, right? Was a huge hit. Admittedly, though, this year, I mean, the way they planned it this year was pretty smart because the games that they had on the Wii U were pretty good games. It's just that the concept of the Wii U just didn't sell well. But the games were pretty good though. So they had a few releases that came out this year that were basically ports from from what was out on the Wii U. And so just to read a bit here on the Nintendo Switch. So it released in most regions on March 3rd of 2017, released in the middle of the 8th generation of home console. So, there's been a lot of discussion here of like what generation is the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2. This is my thought, right? And you can go about it however you want to. I don't know if they've officially announced like what it technically is, because Nintendo really kind of started doing their own thing, right? So it's kind of arbitrary almost, right, as far as what generation it is, because Nintendo again started doing their own thing. A lot of people will consider the Nintendo Switch ninth generation system, right? Because the 8th generation was Wii U, 9th generation was the Switch, 10th generation is the Switch 2. That to me feels off though, because I mean, I get it if you're going off of like just because it's the next Nintendo system, right? So in that sense, yeah, it makes sense, right? But for me, the Nintendo Switch And again, this has happened before in the video game industry, right? Where you had two systems in a generation. So, for example, the Atari 2600, the Atari 5200. I mean, shit, you can almost think of like the Sega 32X and the Sega Saturn. I mean, the 32X was kind of like a 32-bit system. Um, the TurboGrafx 16 and the Super Graphics. Something along the lines of that, right? So I don't think it's out of the, because for me, when I think of generation, is like part of it has to do the power of the system, what it was competing against. Also, it's a big thing, and then also the timeline that was released, right? And so, even though it came out in the middle of this 8th generation system, for me, the Switch was sort of like an answer to basically Nintendo trying to rectifying the mistakes that they made with the Wii U, right? Because it kind of took that concept, but really expanded on it more, where now it truly is a portable system, right? Where you can dock it and then you can pull it out and then play it and go pretty much everywhere and play it as long as you have the battery life for it, right? Where the Wii U was very limited due to however it was reading off of the Wii U, right? Where you could only go so far, right, with playing it remotely. And so for me, the Switch was fixing that problem basically. And so because of that reason, it doesn't feel like it was, and at the time when it came out, even though it was released in the middle of that console generation, it felt like it was still to compete against the, hell, even on Wikipedia it says here, right? And competed against Sony PlayStation 4 and Microsoft Xbox One. It also says also competes against the 9th generation consoles, right? But for me, it still feels like that's what it was meant for, right? To still mainly compete against the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. It's just that they made some missteps with the Wii U, and this is their response to it, right? To fix that, basically. It just, the timing of when it came out was a little odd, right? If we're talking about power, now that's another thing too, right? Where yes, it's not as powerful as the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, because the power. So if we're going back a little bit, right? Nintendo started falling behind as far as its power with the Wii, because we had the GameCube that was in par with the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. But then we had the Wii, where they went in a different direction, right? As far as where it wasn't so much the graphics, it was more the how you play the system that was considered next gen. But like the Wii, right, was on par still graphically with, like, let's say 6th generation graphics, where, the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 were 7th gen. So then we jump over to the Wii U. The Wii U was about as powerful as which was the 8th generation system, but roughly about as powerful as the 7th generation system. But again, it was the next generation system because of how you play the game, right? Your games, with the tablet and all. The Switch, my understanding is that it's slightly more powerful than the Wii U, but pretty much the same thing, right? And so because of that, I feel that's another reason why I feel like it's still an 8th generation system. And also because a lot of the games that came out on it were like re-releases of like games that were on the Wii U. So to me, it kind of feels like Nintendo was doing like, oh, sorry about the Wii U. Let's start all over on this generation. It's kind of the way I interpret it as. But this system, the Switch, though, is very, very revolutionary, where so you have the dock, and so you can, because the system, it's a handheld system, right, and then you have the Joy-Cons on the side, which kind of slide up and down, and you can use those to play also. So the point of the the Switch, hence the name, is how you can switch up the way you play your game, whether it's docked, play it on the TV, you can use a standard controller, or you pull the Joy-Cons out and put it like in this little compact thing, where you can use the Joy-Cons almost like just a regular controller, or buy the Nintendo Pro controller. Or you can pop it off and then play like in a handhold, or you can set it on a table, right? Because it has this little kickstand, and then pop off the Joy-Cons and then play it like that. So that was the whole point of it, right? It gives you a lot of versatility on how you can play the system. And it's wonderful for that. I mean, it's, at the time I didn't really get into it because I've talked about before that I was sort of kind of done with Nintendo, but it was around 2019 when I finally got the system, and because I started hearing a lot of great games that were coming out for it, and also Breath of the Wild, which I'll talk here in a bit about, but also because it was, I had my first daughter was born in 2018, and so I started noticing that my gameplay time, my time to play video games severely dropped, right? And so I wanted something handheld that I could play. Because again, I've talked about it before. While I wasn't too much into handheld gaming, but this is what brought me to that. And so the first Nintendo Switch system that I bought was a Nintendo Switch Lite, which we'll talk about in a few years later. But the concept of the Switch was really intriguing, right? Where again, you can play console-like gaming on the go, and that was truly a revolutionary thing, I think, for a lot of people, and why the system probably sold so well. Because again, it makes a big difference when how some people can play games, especially as you start getting, becoming a busy adult and all, or even for kids, right? They love the Switch. But basically, it wasn't much more powerful than the Wii U. And let's see. Okay, so here we go. So let's see. So the development of the system. So the initial conception of the Switch started shortly after the release of the Wii U in 2012. Kimishima stated that when Nintendo was evaluating new hardware it wanted to produce, it didn't just want a successor to either the 3DS or Wii U, but instead asked, what kind of a new experience can we create? In an interview with the Asahi Shinbun, Kimishima said that the Switch was designed to provide a new way to play that would have a larger impact than the Wii U. Nintendo of America president and COO, and much beloved Reggie Fils-Aimé, I think is how you say his last name, emphasized the console's appeal as a device that would provide gamers the option to play at home or on the go, and it would enable developers to create new types of games. So the commercial failure of the Wii U also pressured Nintendo towards developing the Switch. Early sales of the Wii U were weak compared to the Wii, prompting major third-party publishers like Electronic Arts and Ubisoft to rescind their support of the console near the end of its first year. According to Fils-Aimé, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. I've heard it so many times, but I'm probably mispronouncing it. But when it became apparent that the Wii U would underperform relatively to the company's expectations, the Switch became a make or break product for Nintendo. So again, and that's why I consider the Switch still an 8th generation system, because it's like the Wii U was their 8th generation system. Pretty quickly, they're like, oh, we fucked up with this. Let's try to fix this somehow. But to develop a new system, it takes time. So ultimately, right, but eventually they came out with the Switch. And so again, right, it's not that much more powerful than the Wii U. Let's see. I'm trying to see if it gives me like a quick little thing about the power of the Switch. No, I can't find it. Well, anyways, I'm not that techy enough to really break that down, but that's basically it, right? I mean, it's slightly more powerful than the Wii U. And again, a lot of the games that came out on the Wii U, it just got ported over to the Switch. So it leads me to believe that it's like, it was sort of like Nintendo's apology saying like, sorry for the Wii U, we messed up on it. Here you go. Here's what we were really trying to do. We're just a little late to the game on it. But it was a truly revolutionary system. Again, I remember when I first played Breath of the Wild on the go on the Switch Lite, because again, that was the first Switch system that I got. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Even though, again, the graphics weren't like, say, on par with what was available at the time with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, it was still pretty revolutionary. And yeah, I mean, again, it's become one of the highest selling systems of all time. Definitely the ability to play it hybrid was a huge game changer for a lot of people. And the Switch had a pretty good start, right? So again, some of these games were rollovers from the Wii U, well, not just this year, but also next year, right? And all, because it's almost like Nintendo was timing it, like saying like, okay, let's release this game that was originally on the Wii U within so many months after the release of the Switch, and a little bit later, right, some more games, right? But like just this first year, I think some of the major titles that made a big impact this year for the Switch was, so at launch, we had Breath of the Wild. An incredible game, right? And now again, this game was originally developed for the Wii U, so it also came out on the Wii U. I don't know if on the same day or not, but it came out on the Wii U, and more or less the same experience, right? My understanding that the Switch runs ever so slightly smoother, but not by much. I've played both versions, and to my eyes, they look the same. But the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was truly groundbreaking. You take so they were really trying to do this open world game, right, and really change up the formula of Zelda, probably partly because of the criticism that they got from Skyward Sword, which was very linear. So they went back, and again, I'm just speculating here, right? But they probably said, okay, players don't want a linear experience in a Zelda game, at least not completely linear. So it almost seems like they said, let's go back to our roots of like the Legend of Zelda, the original one on the NES. The original one on the NES, you can go pretty much wherever, right? When you start off the game. Granted, you're going to learn pretty quickly that if you end up in certain areas, you're going to get killed pretty easily, right? But you can go wherever you want in it, and it gave you that freedom. So it seems like they took that, but put it in a big, huge sandbox of a game, right? With The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And this version of Hyrule is humongous. And now when you start off the game, it has a quick little story segment at first. And then after that, you get the really iconic now introduction to where Link comes out of the shrine, walks up to the edge of a plateau, looks out into the horizon. You see Castle Hyrule in the background. And then the title screen shows up, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with the little song playing in the background. Truly memorable now, right? And definitely gave you the scope of like, holy shit, I can go wherever I want in this area. And yes, you can. The first initial tutorial section, right, you are a bit guided along, right, as you kind of figure out the gameplay, but it's pretty quick. And then after that, you can pretty much go wherever, because to my understanding, if you wanted to, once you get past the little tutorial area at first, people have been able to book it to like fight Ganon and beat him. Now, you have to be super skilled to do that, but you can, right? And it gives a sense of freedom that was, there's been open world games. Obviously, we've already had a lot of them before. It's kind of hard to describe. I'm not the best person to explain this, but the sense of freedom that you get from this game, because you don't feel tied down to really any. Okay, I guess what I'm getting at is like, let's say like a game like Grand Theft Auto or like the game we just talked about, Horizon Zero Dawn. They're open world games, right? But it has its story to it that you're following along. And granted, you can go off the beaten path and go do side missions and whatnot. But ultimately, the story, though, is still kind of bringing you back, right, to what ultimately somewhat feels a bit linear. Where Breath of the Wild, it has its story to it, but it is done in a way where it's a bit, it's not that focused, though. All right, lost my train of thought there for a bit. My daughters needed help with. They really got into that game, Castle Crashers, the indie game that came out originally on the 360, and so I have it on the Switch now. And so they've really gotten into it. They think it's funny and like playing the little knights there, right? And so that's like their. It's funny because they'll like hop from one game to the next. So they go through like a phase where like it was Super Mario Wonder at one point, and then it was Cuphead. But now we're starting to transition over to they always have Minecraft in the background too that they like to play. But now it's also Castle Crashers that they've been playing. But anyways, they just knocked on the door that my daughter's controller got disconnected, so they needed help with that. But Castle Crashers, that's a pretty fun game too. But anyways, Breath of the Wild. So what was I talking about? So the openness of the game. Okay, so again, it has a story, but it's pretty loosely told, right? And because of that, it allows the player to really have the sense of freedom as far as what you want to do in this game, because there's not this. It has a perfect balance of like having a story, and I actually kind of like the story to this, the lore behind it and all. I think it's pretty cool, but there's not a whole lot of it. Where it's not like you're going to point A to point B to continue the story. You're just going there because it's a part of the world, right? It's ultimately leading to the finale of where the story's going. But because it's so loosely told, you're kind of making your own story as you go. And a lot of that is just, you're just exploring. Yes, you're talking to people, there's dialogue and all, but it's in service to the world that you're exploring, not definitive narrative that you're following, if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but long story short, it gives the sense of freedom that it gives you in this game is probably the best I've ever felt in a video game when it comes to like, I want to go on an adventure where I'm not tied down to wanting to follow a story. Now, again, I like those kind of games, like let's say like Grand Theft Auto, Horizon Zero Dawn that I just talked a little bit about, or name any other open world game, right, that has a story to it, like Red Dead Redemption, right, for example. I really love that game. It's considered like an open world game, but I'm also, it's like, yes, I'm exploring the world and everything, but I kind of feel like I'm being lured to the story. it's not better, it's not worse. I'm just saying that if I'm talking about a game that gives me the feel of freedom, nothing has done that better for me than Breath of the Wild. Now, like for example, let's say Red Dead, it's kind of a weird comparison, but like Red Dead Redemption, it came out on the 360 and PS3 a few years back. I like that game technically more than say Breath of the Wild, but when it comes to like the sense of adventure, I like Breath of the Wild more. And again, because this open sandbox that it gives you and all the play mechanics that you do in this world here, how you can sort of complete certain objectives, right? Like you see a group of like goblins out in the distance and you're like, okay, I'm going to take these guys on. I can run away from them or just completely ignore them. You have these options at your disposal. And so it really makes it feel like you are guiding your adventure as you're, running around Hyrule as Link, right? There is no pressure to complete the story because again, the story, while it has some urgency, it's not guiding your gameplay. I don't know, I don't know if I'm making sense, but for that reason, it just makes it so much fun to just go out and explore the wild, Breath of the Wild, right? It's probably why they named it that. And as you're exploring, the map is laid out in a way where you're going to find a lot of interesting things to do or find in really well-paced ways. I saw something where they were talking about like the developers were kind of structured Hyrule as one of the cities in Japan where like they're like, okay, this particular landmark in Tokyo, I think, or somewhere is like Hyrule Castle. And then this shrine over here is like this area in Tokyo or something to that effect. And so they did that in a way so that every so many steps, you're going to find something to do that is interesting, right? Whether again, it be battling some goblins or a Korok seed you can find, or a new weapon or a new shrine or whatever the case is, right? And so it constantly feels like that So going back to what I said about A Link to the Past, many episodes back, right? That would have been when I was talking about 1992, I believe. The world of Hyrule in this 2D game, right? And it was helped because the game is more compact, but there's so much cool stuff to do in almost every screen of the game, so that it feels like nothing is filler. They kind of do that with Breath of the Wild, but what's breathtaking about it, though, is that the size of the world is so huge and that there's so much fun stuff to do in it is truly, I think, a feat of great creativity, programming prowess, whatever, right? And all that. It's just so much fun to explore in this game. I guess I've said enough as far as just like the incredible sense of adventure that you get in this game and the freedom that you have to just make your own story and all, so to speak, is truly fun. Having said that, though, there's a moment in this game that so here's another thing too, that if you choose to do certain, because you can beat the game pretty early on, right? But let's just say like if you do choose to complete certain tasks in this game, the payoff to that at the end of the story is one of the most incredible, breathtaking moments in a story that I've ever seen. I don't want to spoil it too much more and all. I just say that it definitely pays to exploring this game because the story payoff is actually pretty cool. But again, that happens at the end, right? So it's almost like this really cool moment that you are rewarded for exploring and trying to do as much as possible in this game. Because otherwise, like I said, right, you don't have to beat everything in this game. If you're truly skilled, you can beat it much earlier. But there is so much fun, though, to discover in this game. And that's the other thing, right, is when you discover a new area, you discover a new item or whatever, it is a lot of fun. It's so engaging and truly stunning. The graphic style in this game is pretty cool. It's like cel-shaded. It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's cel-shaded, but not quite as cartoony as, like, say, like the Wind Waker. So it kind of falls in between, like, the Wind Waker and Skyward Sword, and also a little bit more of a realistic looking Link, but in a very cartoony style. It's cool. I like the graphical style. Not my preferred graphical style for Zelda. I still wish they would make something more realistic. I'm really hoping that the remake of Ocarina of Time gets announced soon, because I want to see what that's all about, and I'm going to lose my shit if it's really good. But anyways, but it's cool. I mean, the graphic looks good. The frame rate kind of stutters a little bit, but after it was patched up in some, it's fairly smooth. At 30 frames per second. I mean, you can only expect the Switch to do so much, right? But the graphic, again, the graphical style and all is really unique to look at. It'll age pretty well as years go on, especially with the patch that it had on the Switch too, right, where it runs smoother now. But at the time though, right, it was pretty impressive that again you have this huge game in the palm of your hands, especially if you're playing like handheld. That's what made this game truly stand out and makes it one of the most incredible landmark games of all time, why it's considered to be for many people the best game of all time. And there's just so much about this game that people love. It's not perfect though. So for example, some issues with it is that it kind of got rid of the dungeons, right? I mean, you have these shrines that you go through and there's numerous littered throughout Hyrule and they're fun to go through, but they are like just little nuggets of gameplay, right? And all where you don't get like a full dungeon experience. So there's that. If you're wanting more of a traditional Zelda, gameplay, right, you kind of lose out on that in this version here. The breakable weapons, I got used to it and I ended up kind of appreciating it, but it is a bit of a nuisance, right? This is a game that I tried playing at first and I couldn't get into it. It wasn't until I kept at it, and then so eventually something clicked where I was like, okay, this is an incredible game. But it didn't start off like that for me though. And one of the things that was annoying was the breakable weapons. So that's the thing. I guess those are my main complaints on that, right? But other than that, though, the overall experience, one of the best times you'll have in gaming. Again, it's known to be probably one of the best games of all time for a reason. It's truly one of Nintendo's best accomplishments, and the fact that it was a launch title. Well, I mean, technically it was on the Wii U, right, and all, but but technically it's a launch title on the Switch, right? So either way, though, however you look at it, just one of the best experiences you'll ever have in gaming. All right, but enough gushing about that game. But we also had, I guess, so there was Zelda, right? It was a huge landmark title at launch. There wasn't much else, though. But like we had Super Bomberman R, that I think was a digital purchase on the eShop at the time. So there was that. But then a little bit later, though, we got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And so Mario Kart 8 was already a pretty big hit as far as Wii U games go. And so we got pretty much the same game, only with a few new additions, and the game would only get expanded on as years to come. So this continued to be a huge seller for the Switch. I think still the highest selling game on the Switch, maybe. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, it's Mario Kart 8, probably one of the best Mario Kart games ever for most fans. And people still seem to prefer this over the newer release. But yeah, again, it was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, great game that will only continue to improve on as years went on. So yeah, another landmark game. We got this game called ARMS. It's kind of like a weird game where you have like these robot-like creatures or enemies, or characters, I think, and they stretch out their limbs. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Some people seem to really like it though. But then we had Splatoon 2. So carrying on from the first Splatoon game, which was, seemed like it was fairly popular on the Wii U, but now it's on the Switch, part 2. And so, it has its fans, and so definitely was a pretty cool game overall. And we had Minecraft. Now, Minecraft has been around already for a while, but it came out on the Switch, and I'm sure that only helped to bolster its sales, right? Because if you think about it, Minecraft is huge, but now your kid can play it on the go, right? I mean, there's probably already ways to do that before, but, in this really user-friendly form factor, I'm sure that also helped drive sales for the Switch, would be my guess. Because, again, Minecraft is huge, and now you have it on this Nintendo platform. That must have been just tremendous. We also had the Elder Scrolls Skyrim on the Switch. So again, this game came out back in 2011, but now it's on the Switch, and that was a big deal, right? Skyrim was still a very popular game, and even though it was 6 years old at this time. And the fact that you can take it on the go like this, and again, there might have been ways to do it before, but on this very user-friendly form factor is what was the big difference here. And it ran and played pretty smooth overall. I would say it was on par with like the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions, once those versions were well patched, maybe more so the 360 version, since the PS3 one was kind of buggy. But anyway, a very playable version of Skyrim. I remember when I got the Switch, so again, this would have been in 2019, but The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Skyrim really took up a lot of my gameplay time on that, right? The fact that I can play these games on the go was breathtaking, right? And so it really revolutionized the way I play games like that. And immediately in my head, I was like, oh, I see why the big deal is about this, right? It was truly incredible. And then we also had, towards the end of the year, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I haven't played this game yet, but if it's anything like Xenoblade Chronicles or Xenoblade Chronicles X, as far as like how deep and expansive these games are, again, and being able to play it on the go, I'm sure that applies the same thing what I said about Breath of the Wild and Skyrim, that it would just been breathtaking to have this large of a game in the palm of your hands, right? I think that's cool. So yeah, all of that really great. That made for just a banger year for the Switch, and but we also had another game too, also. That would have been probably my second favorite game of this year. I mean, well, there was also Hollow Knight too. I don't know. Breath of the Wild, Hollow Knight, and then this game, Super Mario Odyssey, were my favorite games of this year. Breath of the Wild will be my favorite, but Hollow Knight and Super Mario Odyssey, I don't know, it's kind of a toss up. But yeah, Super Mario Odyssey came out later on in the year, and so the fact that we got a big Zelda game and a big Mario game this year, right, was really incredible. Again, with those games there, and then also Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Super Mario Odyssey, also why a lot of people are like Japanese gaming is back, right? And then also we had Persona 5, right, which again came out of North America here in the States this year, I think, right? Because I talked about it last year, right? It came out this year, I think. But yeah, Super Mario Odyssey. So just to end off this podcast here, such a joy to play. Was my favorite 3D platformer for a long time. There's another game that we'll talk about in years later, right, that overtook it. But I really enjoyed this game. So with Mario games, I kind of fell off of them after a while because Super Mario 64, I never really played it too much back in the day, so I don't have that nostalgic sense for it. And when I've tried to go back and play it, I like it. I can definitely appreciate for what it did for the gaming industry. But it is a bit lacking, like its camera controls and all, and I don't know, something about it and all that. I'm just not as invested in it like the way I might have been if I had played it back then. Super Mario Sunshine kind of lost me a bit. That game's a bit difficult, and I don't know, something about that game that I think it's a great game. I think it's a well-quality game. It's just not like a top-tier 3D platformer for me. And then there was Super Galaxy games, which I missed out on, right? Had I played those games more around the time, I might have had a different opinions than what I did at this time regarding Super Mario Odyssey. But now that I've played them, they are great. But for me, the first true 3D Mario game that I really got into was Super Mario Odyssey. And I just had a lot of fun with this game when it came out. It really hooked me. So again, between Breath of the Wild, Skyrim, and then Mario Odyssey, and then also a lot of retro games that I was buying on there, right? It made the Switch just one of my favorite ways to play a game. And Super Mario Odyssey, though, it's just so much joy to play. It's so much fun, easy to control, and it's challenging, but not super challenging, like the way, say, like Sunshine was. And just really great level designs, really addicting to try to find these power moons, and the great levels overall, the different themes to the levels. Looked really good on the Switch, right? Running at 60 frames per second, really colorful. The Switch did lack some resolution, right? A lot of the games look blurry. There was kind of the famous thing about this system where it looked like there was like somebody smeared Vaseline over the screen. But other than that, though, just really nice looking game and a lot of fun to play. Definitely gives you a lot of hours of fun gameplay. And for me personally, my favorite 3D Mario game of all time. Not my favorite Mario game of all time, but my favorite 3D Mario game. And again, the fact that we got a cool Mario game and a cool Zelda game in the same year was really mind-blowing. And definitely the Nintendo made a comeback this year, right? They came back strong this year, and the Switch would only see continued success as the years went on. And yeah, definitely a fun time this year with those systems there, or those games there. Again, I didn't play it until 2019, but they did come out this year. So definitely wanted to give them its time here as we're talking about 2017 in the year of gaming. But a lot of cool stuff, right? And while I felt that like the big major, like AAA, best of the best, modern games was a bit lacking this year. I mean, not that it was bad. I mean, we had things like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, Resident Evil, Horizon Zero Dawn. That's all cool and all, right? But I felt it was kind of a little bit more smaller scale down games that were really the top games this year. So, for example, like all the stuff on the Switch that I mentioned, and then Hollow Knight, Cuphead. And then, for people that are into those kind of games like PUBG and Fortnite, right? So we're seeing that it doesn't necessarily have to be like the big budget games, right? And all that are really cool. It can also be somewhat scaled down games, right? And all that are, some of the best in the industry. Overall, a great year, right? I can see why this is a favorite for many people. And yeah, I mean, definitely an awesome year for video games. And yeah, the return of Nintendo and Japanese gaming, which was cool. But I think I've gone on a little bit already for long for this one. Wasn't expecting it to go on this long. I think this might end up being my longest episode. So if you stuck around for any reason, and I'm not just talking to myself here, truly appreciate it. Hopefully, my goal with this is that you are just gaining some either nostalgia from video games as we talk about them here, or that you are getting some information if you're just trying to, do some research on video game history. I always love talking about this stuff. It's a sort of very stress relieving for me. I had a bit of a hard week this week at work, and so been a bit stressed out. And it's one of those things, when you have a bad week at work, you're on your weekend, but then some of that stress is still going to carry over to the next week, right? It's just you kind of don't look forward to Mondays, and I'm recording this on a Sunday, so this has actually been a great stress reliever for me. And so I hope I can bring some information to you for video games, get your mind off of things. I know the world's been kind of crazy with everything going on, and so at the very least I hope that this can help you reminisce on something that I would assume if you're anybody listening to this, you're a geek like me, you like video games and all. And so at the very least I hope that this provided you some information, some entertainment, I guess. I know my dumb ass is not the best talker, right, when it comes to this stuff, but at the very least I hope I'm able to provide some information about video games that we love. But that's what I got for 2017. So hopefully next week I'll be up with the next episode. Again, I try to put these up on Sundays, and so we are going into 2018 next year. And so I mentioned that this year was kind of the year for a bit smaller scale games. 2018 is one of the years that I felt in the 8th generation where it was about a lot of cool AAA games, right? AAA games get a lot of shit nowadays, right? Understandably so. But when they do them good, they do them good. And it's really what pushes the industry forward in a lot of ways. And so we had actually several great games next year that come out. So, we have the return of a certain angry bald man, right? And then we also had a favorite web slinger of everyone from Marvel. And we also had a cool game that is set in the Wild Wild West, and a lot of great experiences this coming next year. And so we will talk all about that hopefully again next week. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great one. And till the next.